Being humiliating by Mo Men, he grimo-mend his teeth, grinding his teeth and his high anger in the upper side, just the Grand Master of the small Mo Men, the subordinates of the subordinates. But he dared to confess that he was in front of the disciple of this sword, hearted disciple in his heart. He still swallowed himself in his heart, because he was polite, because he dared to climb his neck, to ride his neck. How why? Chen Xiao thought again, and tightened his hand so tight that he was trembling to death. Even though I would like to learn this acting, but if you were so rude, do not blame me for pinching you. After thinking, Xiao immediately looked up and said that I loudly served the destiny of the Mon. Lu Zhaoge frowned. What you called me? Chen Xiao annoyed to answer him. In the Tianshuan world at the Danking Mountain of the Qingshuan Mo sect, Lu Dongli and Xiao Qiu, riding a carpet in the sky, she told her to go with Xiao Qiu, and before the area of Momendan, Qingshan, and you noticed a little bit, Qiu, also extremely listening to her cheerfully answered, yes, 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 yes. Next the two landed in front of Momen's gate. Lu Dongli carried a little Chu on his back and went inside, and went to the same way, and advised his disciples to be a little Chu. This is the first time you go to the mountain to want you to be more familiar with the situation of Danthan Mountain. At this moment she suddenly stopped looking at Xiao Qiu at the back, gently saying that by the way, reminding him a few things and rules to pay attention to the subject. Xiao Qiu happily smiled and responded to the master, my master would listen carefully. Lu Dongli used to use the air in the air in the air. The face was changed from time to time, or she told me that I was finished and I had to remember these rules. Talking for a while, the two of them were close to the gate, and then we were the current Mo Men, which added a total of 10 people with 6 disciples and one more person who was the disciple of the Grand Master. Suddenly the eyes of the Dong looked far away from the Grand Master's master. My elder brother was greater than 6 years old, so he had to respect him even more than me. It is a very serious eye, like a warning, the child on his back. Xiao Qiu was threatened with fear of death to imagine the scene of his master the devil, who was not in the meat of the Grand Master. Lu Dongli closed his eyes and shook his head, not eating, but this is much more scary. But in her heart, she secretly said that he was sick. Recalling that year, Lu Zhaoge stood high above, looking down with a dangerously calm expression, and declared, little Lear, you will never know where I truly came from. Nor will you realize that I had long since seen through the true nature of this Tianshuan world. This place is nothing more than a game, and I am merely experiencing the mortal realm. Lu Dongli said that his sin had a long-standing illness, and always said that the Strangi words were extremely confusing. At that time, he was still very small. Her face was too much, wondering what the real nature of the world was, what the song. Wait until the day my parents lost Lu Zhaoge kneeling on the ground crying and crying in the world. For more than 40 years, only 2 people told their children what is love, father. Lu Dongli by beside him need to remind the 19-year-old brother. Only after his death, he not only remembered his age, but also said what he was the main character with the death of the mother who died with each other. Lu Dongli finally could not help but sigh. She thought that the brain of the brain had a problem, that Mo Men could only rely on her efforts to practice protecting the name of Mo Men, could only become stronger. Suddenly Xiao Qiu pointed to the other person who was the Grand Master. She looked over Lu Zhaoge when he saw him standing on a high rock, causing Lu Dongli to shout in panic. He put his hand to perform some techniques and then said a few sentences of the morality of the realm of real enlightenment. Lu Zhaoge Thine Huyen Van Ko Truong. The translated meaning that this heaven and earth did not have Lu Zhaoge, Ta Thine Huyen forever submerged in the illusion of the illusion. Ludong. Li immediately pulled his hand from the back to his back to make her startled as if he was about to fall. The place then she covered her hand and said that she could not hear. Xiao Qiu widened her eyes and looked at the person in front of her extremely cool manner. She exclaimed, so handsome. Xiao Qiu met a beautiful boy, like seeing stars in the sky, that his eyes began to sparkle himself silently, to tell himself that this was the master of the master that the master mentioned stars. Lu Zhaoge turned around and told me that I could go to the Moman. My fate is also lucky to accumulate my whole life. Lu Dongli's face darkened upon hearing those words. She just wanted to dig a hole and crawl into it. Little Qiu, with her outstanding talent, could easily join any major sect she wanted. Meanwhile, our humble Mo sect sword school, one of the 300 small to medium sects, is barely worthy of carrying others' shoes. The fact that she's willing to be my disciple. Now that is real fortune. Kassinger even said anything but fortunate for the whole life. I saw that Xiao Qiu looked at Lu Zhaoge passionately startled and clenched his hands and started to feel that the Chu was about to be infected and was about to be taught spoiled. Lu Dongli did not say many words but directly picked her up and told Lu Zhaoge, the elementary brother, Chu was probably tired and let me take her home to rest first. Xiao Qiu was carried up without pleasing to turn around to call the Grand Master. Lu Dong. Li immediately turned her face to the face of the warning girl not to look back. The two of them left Lu Zhaoge to smile. He called 2 hours of Chu, then dispersed the magic. Looking at the girl on the character board of the system, he wondered where this little girl picked up this girl. So the attribute index was very high, but we seemed to be lucky to pick up her. But a girl, Lu Zhaoge thought that we pierced into the game Tine Hu Yen. the world for 21 years and also 21 years has passed. So he was a person who did not have any piercing before saying so many confusing words like that. Tain Hu Yen. The world is a virtual reality game in the opening world of the 22nd century, that someone said it was created by the god who said it was the world, and the world told him that this was the world. But the player was just a point in that world. The more I think that Lu Zhaoge is deeper to 21 years here, we have never had any enlightenment to calculate. A little bit of this game is about to step into the test. At this time, the system shows the notice that is downloading the test of the entire unlock function. Lu Zhaoge smirked a voice that he had predicted. The notice table appears before the eyes of Lu Zhaoge. The player is entitled to check the character information you want to conduct a test. Lu Zhaoge looks at the notice board, immediately does not hesitate to press the test button. Shortly after the system offered the basic information of him. Lu Zhaoge level 10 blood, 5151 internal attack, 1295 JAS $1300. Basic 1 can promote the maximum index. The current swordplay is 1 and can promote the maximum index of 10, predestined 3. 1491596 cannot be promoted. The maximum index is the maximum. The conclusion is a beautiful name. At the moment, Lu Zhaoge felt running out of his ant. His face did not imagine the emotion that tried to turn out a few words, other things that could be promoted, and then just a chance to look like a pi number. I ignored this. He put his hand on his chin, and his handsome smile, he felt excited, and then said that he would leave himself to look like he was very handsome and weak anyway. Life on the system shows the countdown of the countdown to start testing over the Earth 30 days. The corner of Lu Zhaoge's mouth could not help but even seem to be excited that the time the Earth was 30 days. According to the time of Tain Hu Yen, the world is 300 days, 300 days later. Lu Zhaoge stood upright in the middle of the system, but a little bit of the Earth player tested was really the words that were too far away for a long time. I was also an individual on the pitiful planet. At this time, the status of Lu Zhaoge was revealed, the bustling image of the Earth. Again I was Lu Zhaoge, except for the handsome beauty of the sky and a rich super rich, which made readers desire that female streamer cosplayer, we want to play some girls. The image of the piano hugging with many girls is the dream of many people who do not make the previous life, not only like to play people who love the characters in the game. Of course, our skill normally has only one thing, that is the power of money. Lu Zhaoge's previous life was very extravagant and proud. He looked at his opponent when a sentence mocked 2 sentences that criticized the evil boys. How could you die all the floods of this waste? When he was just at home, he just finished playing the game. He did not do anything, but opened his mouth to find a parent, and parents a child, and then have rice yet. In the middle of the silent space, people feel a little lonely. Lu Zhaoge pulled the game. Mo Minheen down to his head, used to this silence in his heart, with a little thought of my parents, because too rich, except for not taking the divorce certificate for a long time. I did not go home. In the game, he always has a thought that he feels the best. We are, the orphanage without both parents who have relationships between us, and they only have money, transfer money, and money transfer outside when transferring money will not call us. Sometimes in my virtual world, Lu Zhaoge once said, everything, if we call them, will not pick up the phone. Even we don't even know where they are, knowing that the children grow up in the situation, as we grow up. The more they feel lost interest in everything. Lu Zhaoge's thoughts are very simple because we have all. That day, Lu Zhaoge was still in the game as usual. Often the surrounding space is like a row of data that carries him away from nothingness. When he opened his eyes again, Lu Zhaoge was no longer. In the real world, the first image he saw was a man and a beautiful woman looking at himself. The first thing that came in him was until we woke up and we were born. Lu Zhaoge coincided with the body of a newborn who carried him as the mother of the client. His father looked at it for a while and happily said that I decided, and the name of our death is called Outside the window, the breeze carries the sound of a peaceful charging pole. His mother looked out outside, a gentle smile, and then gently told him to call the boy Zhaoge, the plump face in the small towel. Zhaoge is his name. In both the previous life and this life, his parents seemed to love him. He always repeated his name. Zhaoge, Lu Zhaoge. Sometimes he really does not believe in reality. We do not dare to think of us, but we have even achieved something that we have longed for a long time. The world is thousands of things, absolutely cannot help love and friendship. At this time, the system table has a new notice of the mission feature that has been unlocked to accept the reception of yes or no, say a word. Lu Zhaoge, looking at the mission, immediately laughed. For more than 20 years. Now we have not always accumulated experience, but it is impossible to promote and cannot accept the task now. He quickly clicked on the word to receive the mouth, and also added a sentence full of confidence that was stupid. The system offers a new notice with the words to check the player's identity. Suddenly a confirmation of the identity of the player's identity is the Momen Grandmaster. Then again, another system, again, provided the task of the player and received the mission of the Momen Renaissance. Click here to check the situation of Lu Zhaoge. Looking at this text is a bit suspicious, or revival Momen. Remembering this father's father, he could not help but admire and think that his father's whole life wishes that Momen grows. Of course, we want to continue it. Thinking, he quickly clicked on the words to check the situation without hesitation. Immediately after that, from the air, a golden light appeared, making people feel blinding. Looking at the simulation of the Lu Zhaoge system, it could not help but praise it for the effect. After a while, the words completed, the assessment of the mission appeared, and the 5 words Momen did not hit the eyes of Lu Zhaoge. Seeing this line of Lu Zhaoge's face, he immediately moved as if he had to eat the drought, and then the Momen mission appeared without the Zhaoge level to look at the words on the system without saying it into words. He muttered that although Momen was a real baby, but this level did not say pain, it was not hurt, but it was so humiliating. Zhaoge hesitated. As I remember, in the world of heavenly world of the least rank, the 9 ranks, there are also 4 great swords of the most belonging to the history of the record of the book that has appeared for a super-level subject. Zhaoge doubted that he could not believe that the least rank was counting as the 9 products. Why his Momen was not the level of Zhaoge's face, he showed his doubt, or he continued his system of faults. Table of the palace system for an hour, and then showing the words, the conditions of the Cuu Tongmon 1. The member of the subject achieved 10 people who have completed the conditions for achieving the 9-tailed monk 2. The rank of Grand Monk achieved the most seen Momen Zhaoge. Zhaoge had to accept the truth, that smiled wryly and unexpectedly, that the problem was that he seemed to have to go down the mountain tomorrow to break through. He jumped down while thinking about telling the Momen not to be granted, should not be called Sword Tong. Then he went to the tombstone. Typing cock, he called out loudly. He still did not forget to say that in addition to the 10 official people of Momen Tong, we still have a position. Zhaoge saw the land on the tomb of the gas rising, and then said that he was here so good. He secretly told the position of Tran Tong Mon, who was picked up by the 31st Grand Master of the 31st Grand Mon. He continued to think that this was just a strong power that was strong and weak. And the bad thing, we still don't know if the person is dead in the end. Scenes inside the building. In the quiet space of the heads of Momen, the 2 brothers and sisters are sitting opposite to each other in front of the chessboard. The Grand Momen Lu Zhaoge darkened his face and said that the elder was going down to the mountain this time, but he decided to go. Elder Momen is the younger sister, her younger sister. She watched him show a suspicious face of the human life. Zhaoge angrily reached out towards her and said disrespectful order to the punishment. Seeing that Dongli quickly retreated behind his eyes to show disdainfully looking at him, Zhaoge felt so panicked and stuttered, but I was so heartbreaking. Dongli looked at his brother, who was not polite but gave a steady point. A brother clearly stated why he went down the mountain in a dangerous mountain, so he had to be bored in the mountain of cultivation. At this time, Zhaoge also angry and smashed his hand down the table. He gave his new opinion resolutely because the duty to go down to the mountain to break through the need to bleach the medium of the subject, we can only sell itself. Dongli heard that his eyes were as bright as a happy car headlight. Brother finally broke through, and then Zhaoge did not expect the reaction of his sister, but insecurity said that the child was surprising. Hearing him say that Dong Li shouted and shouted Hu Dai was full of fullness. For many years, he thought that he had completely become a sick man and did not expect it to be unexpectedly blue. He had eyes. Zhaoge, my hometown is the uncomfortable hometown, saying that I said that the less fortunate words for us, I told me that this big teenager went down to my mountain, not only to break through, but also have to break through. After saying that, he stood up and made a majestic appearance that made Momen famous throughout Tain Hu Yen. The world Huang Tong died to. Happy, not long ago, suddenly stopped and started. She thought in the heart of the brain disease of the Sinjir more and more severe. Shortly thereafter, 4 Momen Tong stood in front of the door to see off Zhaoge going down to Donglei Mountain, saying that he was about to start. Chu asking where there was a vegetarian dumpling where this trip was. In addition to Zhaoge, Qiu Dongli also had more hating Lu Zhaoge because he was too faint to skip the introduction. Zhaoge turned to Dongle, wondering that the elder of the elder must definitely wear so normal why he dressed in other people. How could we realize that we were a fairy? How to know how a fairy, in law of Huang Lam? Not to mention the whole sentence, he shouted loudly, causing the chicken to fly the dog's order as usual as the tall tree to welcome the big wind, so he had to be humble. He kept his view. Not far away, the 2 of them stared at them. They were noisy on the other side of the south, said that the name was still so noisy to hear the other person laugh. So, what are you gonna do? The 4 Lu Zhaoge Dongli, Xiao Qiu Hei Ting sat in the leaf flying in the sky. Zhou told his master forest under the red leaves, and then explained to her that this place was HOA, died for Lam erasing. Depending on the draft that we want to find is here. Xiao Qiu looked up and looked at her to ask the master of the Grand Master, why was it so stupid? Lu Dongli also did not regret the explanation that helped her that. Because when practicing Dish Qilong was a certain ability to practice the practice, he must have a little Chu later, so he should learn a little more. A little Chu's eyes glowed as if she had just picked up the golden master of the master turned out to be so dangerous. but Lu Zhaoge is currently considering the tasks that the system offers extremely unsightly face. Progressive mission. There are 4 levels of royal blue death lemon with 4 different colors. Lu Zhaoge thoughtfully looked at the system in front of him, then put his hand on his chin to stroke his chin, which was similar to his previous life. He had to proceed with this promotion mission this time. Most players will choose Hoing's mission to be both simple and fast, so most of them love yellow. The task of Lamb is the task of the top players who choose to be the element of the players with a specific career. Finally, Chant granted a previous life mission, heard that only Hung Mao Lan's character chooses anyway, only the most powerful players with the dare to choose the type of self-seeking mission. Lu Zhaogu's eyes became increasingly sharp and not knowing what he would choose. Finally, Lu Zhaoge's fingers have come from that what we choose will be the direction he is aiming for is the lowest level of Hoing. Any doubt, Lu Zhaoge suddenly changed the direction of thinking that he wanted to do the most majesty. But ding, a sound of the task was successful. Lu Zhaoge smirked. The highest mission is not just like that. Why are they flying in the air but there are still people closely watching the other 2 chasing and not forgetting to use stealth techniques for themselves to avoid being discovered? Ant King looked far away and laughed and said that the wind is really bustling today. Yu Ye, face a little worried, 2 hands hugging the sword in front of the chest, asking the king to urge us to follow them so that it will not be discovered. Aunt King was leisurely sitting and reclaiming that I just wanted to just wear the most brilliant clothes, standing in front of the small dental house. She could not see me anywhere. Yu Yue next to close your eyes, silently sighing. You don't need to take such weird example. Aunt King smiled happily and glanced at my nephew. But I was very curious you came to the end because I admire or hate Lu Zhaoge, and go with me to see it break through here. Yu Yue 2 eyebrows again, uncomfortable if really to say. As soon as he said he thought of Lu Zhaoge's image, the gaze becomes more and more cold, perhaps hatred. Aunt King showed an extremely curious expression watching. Yu Yue hatred could make a sword like you in the lower body of the first young man who was forever old and not old. This side, Lu Zhaoge and the other 3 people glide like the wind. The leafy carpet landed at Lu Zhaoge first. Then he did not forget to support the small Chu Lu on the above, to say that he entered the fire of died. We took the bleach immediately to leave immediately. Could not stay too long here. Lu Zhaoge showed a puzzled face to look at me, so I was hiding my strength. Not just now that we lowered so stable that I could not do that. I could not do so. Ludong! Blackface closed his eyes and smiled as if he was hit by a black heart. How could ha not forget to collect the leaf carpet again? Lu Zhaoge helplessly thought in his heart and appeared on his face, and then the male man could only rely on himself to not rely on soot, I thought. And then Lu Zhaoge turned around and went first to say that we could find the blinds, and then continued to talk and happily ran after the cave to open the way on the other Heiting, who was also carrying a small Chu on the shoulder, and followed. According to this time, the system of Lu Zhaoge shows that the content of the mission alone defeats the boss beast level 10. His face seriously thought that although he said this task was simple, I still discovered a difficult point of boss, so that here is strong, how strong the boss is easy to find. But the fake is extremely powerful, but the wild chicken has the same power as the same power. Lu Dongli ran upwards to turn around, happily saying that our aura is so fast and fast, we have found the bone marrow, and more than the time when the 3 root always. Looking at the 3 root bleaching in front of him, Xiao Qiu took a breath to run the fragrant saliva too much. At this time, from the nearby grass, there were a crimson eyes staring at them. Lu Zhaoge waved his hand and ordered not to go anywhere. This grass today is mine and everyone cannot take it to believe me. Lu Zhaoge just looked over to discover that he shouted loudly not to move with beasts. Xiao Qiu scared to shiver the beast. Lu Zhaoge walked forward, ding a system of notifications of the task, target locked. Lu Zhaoge happily walked away and secretly thought that we knew. And then the charm of 30141596 of our only illustrated 3 root bleaching the root of the spiritual spirit. Meeting the beast was suitable for the mission requirements. This is the temperament of normal people. After that, Lu Zhaoge was even more excited than walking towards the bleaching of the marrow, causing Lu Dong to widen his eyes, and his mouth was about to open to the ground, and then he dared not know what the hidden beast was like that, but so on. Xiao Qiu 2 eyes sparkling, constantly admiring the Grand Master. Lu Dongli could not help but put his hand on the sword in a position ready to fight if the beast was not strong, so that the Singer would be resolved, and if he was strong, he would probably respond to it. At a tree not far away, Aunt King and Yu Yue still observed each act of 4 people. Momen Gia. Yu Yue observed from the beginning until now, cautiously saying that the mother urged her to feel the atmosphere of the 9 beasts, is also the elementary of the fullness of King. She laughed and laughed. So you thought that Lu Zhaoge would do what to do? Yu Ye responded to the realm of the beast compared to the monk, much stronger, so you have to lure it. Then a close, toad nod. Nodding, you is right. Go back to Lu Zhaoge. He is standing under the tree of the blinds of the bone, born saying that, Ya Lu Zhaoge is gapped. Make 2, Aunt King and Yu Yue observed from the beginning until now, all kinds of tactics also have to be helpless, that the face has absolutely no tactics at all. From above to look down, it is easy to see that Lu Zhaoge is giving hands to pick up the blessing, the boss tent. Ember was annoyed and rushed out to open the big mouth to attack Lu Zhaoge. He is still kneeling there with a sinister smile in his hand and glowed silently, thinking that the high-class hunter was from the hunting way. On this side, Xiao Qiu and He Ting were threatened to open the mouth of the girl who shouted at the Grand Master. Lu Zhaoge absolutely does not care about the people behind saying what he plunged up with a black air from the surrounding gathered to the boss standard and probably had the bloodstream of the beast Kology. The black airflow has now gathered into a sword. Lu Zhaoge grasped it tightly to confront the big snake swinging a sword with a cross section of the Shao Ge. This side, Yu Yu suddenly tilted her head to one side, making Aunt King notice. Aunt King glanced to look at Yu Yue, asking how Yu Yue put her hand up to support her neck. His heart secretly thought, how could it be that for so long his body still reacted? Recalling that year, Lu Zhaoge and Yu Yue were standing among a bunch of children. They were beaten to swollen. Both your face, and then they took turns saying that the brother was bullied, what he said. But he was the sword. Ton Aya. He said he did not deserve to be his opponent as his opponent. Yu Yui looked up and looked at the person grabbing his collar and arrogantly said that you dare to be the one next to the sword of the sword. If I had not finished talking, I would have a Lu Zhao get hat slapped him in the face later than me. I was the brother who had the son of heaven today. Returning to the present, Yu Yue is still blankly slapping that slap, also flies the arrogance of the child who does not consider anyone like, he just makes me subdue. Not that slap. Here the 10-level bar of the black bar has been beaten by Lu Zhaoge. Looking at the way he stood in front of the black literature of the sword, smiling, Yu Yu thought but was an abnormal cultivation speed as well as his eyesight just now. He slashed him out in the disadvantage of the other beast. Lu Zhaoge collects the sword in the ring. Then put your hand out to the black Van A level, which turn into the experience of the duty. That large bar can only add an hour, and then turn into a black airflow to be captured by Lu Zhaoge. Xiao Qiu on one side applauded. Lu Dong. Li. On the contrary, the black face is clearly impossible to be a close, but want to waste the spiritual energy that releases this sword of gas to fight straight as the color as if there is a child. How about one more? Lu Zhaoge collected his hand and smiled faintly. He still had the ability to spit out his poisonous bone. He did not want to be directly sprayed by him and used a bad resurrection to scare him. At this time, the system of his system appeared to notify the player successfully destroying the heterogeneous heterosexual. Van A received 100,000 experience points. The next notice also shows the task of toning to complete the task reward. Lu Zhaoge put one hand in the back to look at the notice board that is not bad at 1,000 points of experience and accepting the rewards. Ding, for several hours a charm appears. Lu Zhaoge received it without surprisingly conline, but it was the peak of conline covered by the prestige of a practitioner who had a sublime quality, or was a certain force of heavenly, or receiving an opportunity to start the spirit, was also the beginning of the path to turn into a fake power. Koi line can renovate the spiritual energy that makes the power of heaven, for example, will become LOI. Koi line, the hurricane, becomes a style. Dongli is the fire. Lu Zhaoge grabbed the leaves in his hand and smiled as bright as flowers. What was his attribute that would be this Wulu? Lu Zhaoge collected his hand and smiled at fire-dyed sun on this four-sided risk that Koi line was afraid that he would criticize the life of the original spirit and find a safe place to start the new character as the main character to do. Lu Zhaoge touched the root of the spirit being glowing below. He picked a root into a circle of magic. Let's take one root is enough, and then the other 2 roots left for the predestined person. The 4 of them up a giant leaf flying through the forest covering is a red. Lu Dongli said the Attorney General was looking for a safe place to break the breakthrough. Xiao Qiu looked up. The master seemed to be particularly sensitive to 2 safe words. Under the creative flower tree into a sparkling circle, 2 shadows printed on the trunk of the tree, hastily left here, to bleach the herbal marrow, and not all to want to break through immediately. Aunt King knelt down and touched her hands to touch the sparkling Harlem underneath. But the other is, because Lu Zhaoge cannot preserve them to pick them up, just to see them ruins. Aunt King put the herbal bonbons in a wooden box, Yu Yue standing beside her to look at her heterosexual, and the flexible box capable of putting this word with black giving them to them. At a large waterfall around the large cliffs, Soot checked the scope of the year around this place, without great beasts nor a person's temperament. Lu Dongli holds the sword in his hand to observe around in general very safe. Lu Zhaoge stood below, confusing to look at the face, as if to tease and check the scope of the year. We are just a breakthrough of the scene. It is not the natural life. The uncomfortable and uncomfortable screaming of thousands of safe roads is the right way. Lu Zhaoge sat down. He Ting mastered the cushion down, making him a little surprised and then satisfied to smile. It seems that I have said that I will miss a way. Lu Zhaoge transforms the bone marrow to appear in his hand, radiating a circle of light that has an attendance in the brother who has a strong energy. Lu Dongli quickly advanced to the shift you really are about to break through. Xiao Qiu also proceeds to the glittering eyes full of admiration for small mouth, because of the desire for the Grand Master who now needs to eat this kind of fragrant spirit. Lu Dongli stands and does not know what to say to his disciples. Q's eyes became more and more sparkling with water in the mouth, and more than two finners touching each other full of lovely people who would not be divided by Xiao Q. Lu Zhaoge immediately swallowed the spiritual tree into the mouth, calmly said that it was not divided because once eaten, Lu Zhaoge suddenly chest painfully pale, making the little chew. Besides panic, will be very painful. Xiao Qiu innocently ran to shake the hand of Lu Dongli. His master quickly saved the masters to go to the teacher to eat the stem and was about to have abdominal pain, and then Lu Dong's beside the helplessness. A man stood inside the grove of the tree squeezing the sword in his hand and watching the crowd. In the distance, Lu Zhaoge started cultivating. Yu Yue looked at the people far away from you. Aunt King stood beside her hand crossed in front of Yu Yue's chest, and little Li Tu are all breaking the spirit right. Yu Ge nodded. The master is like that. Aunt King smiled, so you thought if Zhaoge could start? Yu Yue panicked and shouted, so I couldn't smile, and smiled and covered her mouth to cover her mouth. Yu Yue immediately respectfully bowed his head to the disciple of the disciple, that from the past to the past, the person who was 16 years old and older has never been successful in the continent's history so many years. And still, no one who thinks Zhaoge does not start the spirit. Auntie King said, well, not so unfortunate. Zhaoge but breakthrough earlier maybe still started but now hopeless. Lu Zhaoge sat in a large circle. Below was a blooming flower floating in the air around the brilliant light emitting lights. Lu Dongli was astounding that this was Koi Line CA, but Koi Line. In the middle of a large space, a stream of light shines straight into the air to create sparkling aura oath. Both Aunt King and Yu Ye are extremely shocked with the scene in front of her mouth gaping. The light shot straight into the sky high through the white clouds. Light like puncturing the clouds creates a huge light column. Everyone, everywhere, sees the scene of extremely excited people who have started the spirit this time. This time, they do not see the whole life. The whole life will disappear quickly and go out to see the bustle of the practice of Tain Huyen. The world and the people of other places is not the same because the destiny is too long. Not everyone is ambition, but extremely loving. Aunt King became angry around and radiating the purple power of the eyes. The eyes of the sky did not know that the sky and the thick of our people were also startled, but also dared to bother. The great power blows the people who are gradually coming to see the scene. A man immediately said that this is the prestige of the great power. So the disciple of this great powerful power is not waiting for more than we want to live very much. Lu Zhaoge opened his eyes around him that was turned into another space that was only black and blue with long white colors around this place. Lu Zhaoge was surprised to move forward. The heavenly force, the mind of Lu Zhaoge on the body without a piece of cloth that covered the body floating in the middle of the dim space area. Far away, there are sparkling stars that each of them represents a spirit, which means a different kind of power. Lu Zhaoge, searching around, is the new spirit, belongs to us here. But Strangeli, when Lu Zhaoge reached his hand to touch, no one told me that those who were competing to run away made Lu Zhaoge be surprised and shouted, the space in front of the smoke is so white my skin is too white. Suddenly, Lu Zhaoge discovered something behind him was glowing. He was surprised to turn here. When you see it clearly, what is Lu Zhaoge happily touching my spirit, to turn out to be that you are so unique. Going for a long time, Xiaoqiu lying on the lawn has now dreamed. Xiaoqiu saw his master, the hand holding the sword, extremely surprised to look ahead of Xiaoqiu, immediately asked the master's right. Then surely Dong Li will gently take out a piece of blinds to give to Xiaoqiu and say this for me to eat quickly if the pain remembers the master. Then the Chu will eat the blessing in the joy of the happiness of the master's expression. But it is surprising that I feel so awake, but the taste of the blinds is really delicious, but does. Because just now was just because the little Chu imagined that the Dong was still gaping at the air in astonishment in front of the little Chu, to wonder the master seemed to look at the master who was looking at where. Then Xiaoqiu also turned to look in the direction that Dong Li was looking at when he was surprised to discover the waterfall. In the distance, the water does not flow. The fish to note that this is not a picture of the small. Quite unexpectedly, the waterfall does not flow anymore. On a large area, there is a blinding light from the ground to the sky through high clouds. But Lu Zhaoge is sitting cross-legged in the middle of that light source. His whole body radiates the strong gas. The more strong the light is so dazzling that the Chu cannot bear to cover his hands and cover his eyes, and blinding the needle too blinding. In the middle of that light blooming petals like lotuses also appeared the word NHS Koi Line. Yu Yue stood not far away from observation from surprisingly, but the Tine Dai Chi Lens King next to the side was equally surprised that only the first person to initiate the spirit of the heavenly force can receive the Tine Dai, instructing you and the little Li Tu, because you are not the first person to get the recognition of the fire and the style. Aunt King's unfinished saying made Yu Yue more certainly said that he could not mistake him not only to start spirit, but also the first person to start this kind of force. Yu Yue thought that it was just a brother who was given to them. Aunt King, as if reading Yu Yue's thoughts, it was always water that made Yu Yue look at her. Brilliant lotus platforms rose layer upon layer into the sky one after another. The glowing inscription Nu Kai Lin still hovered in place, dazzling and unyielding as if waiting for the entire population to finish reading it. In the distance, People from all walks of life, regardless of status, shared one thing in common: their love for excitement. Witnessing this once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon, the crowd buzzed with discussion. Today, our eyes have truly been opened. No one knew which sect this person belonged to, nor whose trusted disciple they might be, yet they were able to activate a heavenly mandate. Others began chiming in one after another. How many heavenly decrees will appear? I wonder if there are 4 or 5 that would already be quite impressive. The light has not stopped from the dazzling yellow light. Now it still appears other streaks mixed together. The surrounding light of Lujiaoge now has water prizes to contribute to the water source, and the light source racing with each other to create beautiful 7 colors. But Lujiaoge stood there silently. In his heart could not open his eyes who is in the end who is saying so. Sound is so loud as this. The lotuses are still expanding from the middle of the lotus to shoot a few more lines. Although Lujiaoge did not open his eyes, he could still feel everything that was happening for 6 hours. Lu Dongli stood outside, but his hands clasped tightly to the sword, trembling with an extremely worried expression. Urgently 6 day, and then he tried to go to the 9 religion. Yu Wei until now 3 parts surprised 7 parts. Like 3 based on the record, whenever the person who can launch the heavenly religion only has at least 6 paths that must be considered by each person. Aunt King beside the eyes, and deeply asked you to feel that Zhao Ge was finally able to launch the heavenly religions, that the dues order, the helpless eyes in response. Of course, the more haha the master, I could not guess. Continuing to have 2 more heavenly religions. 2 lines of brilliant spirit. But it did not affect Lu Jiaoge very much because he was closing his eyes, and at the same time Lu Jiaoge was like, he had just enlightened something. He seemed to be understood. In a moment Lu Jiaoge seems to be smart. The heavenly release is just a sound recorder. Lu Jiaoge is now floating in the air. The lotus in turn spread around the 7 colored rainbow lights into a circle. Lu Dongli monitors the whole process of giving sweat. Lotus flew up higher, then turned upside down, then created a heavenly religion of the order of the words, NHS, Koi line. Again, light again. A light shone through the body of Lu Jiaoge whether it is done. The bottom of the business is 9 to 9 the 9 paths. Lu Jiaoge is satisfied with smile, 9 times the destiny. Because we are not in heaven, this thing is due to our efforts, so that Lu Jiaoge confidently opened his eyes in the light, flashing a strong, steadfast light. Lu Jiaoge stood firmly in the air and waved his hand and shouted a sound of the sparkling strips of water flying at the signal of the direction of the body of Zhao Ge. When the step of Lu Jiaoge was able to come out with the reality of the system at the same time, there was a notice to him, to congratulate the player Koi Lin's success, to recognize the heavenly force that they saw, that Lu Jiaoge did not say anything, but just laughed slightly, and the surrounding water rays suddenly changed around running Lu Jiaoge, just seeing Zhao Ge go out safely. Both hating Lu Dongli are happy and happy. But all the day to come to others happily ran, to say the brother saw how. And the opposite of that, Xiao Qiu said, the Grand Master of the bone fuel, was so delicious. Just heard the little Qiu said that there was an extreme gaze of judgment to look at the little girl Qiu, who was hugging the red cheek, but happily remembered the food and laughed, hi-fi. On the other hand, Lu Jiaoge suddenly turned towards the waterfall in front of his hand, and raised his hand, and there was a magic power that appeared to feel the world in my eyes. When Lu Jiaoge is still not all saying, all the rays of water from the waterfall increasingly flying counting to create an extremely beautiful scenery. Lu Jiaoge controls the rays of water flying into a very shimmering shimmer at the witness of the unexpected witness of Lu Dongli and He Ting next to him, and said that he is not as mysterious as before anymore. Just finished the sentence of Lu Jiaoge, he decisively crushed the sparkling sphere like a glass that shattered it and splashed everywhere. But it is very easy for a moment, Lu Jiaoge, to create another water sphere without much effort. Looking at the power of myself, it makes Lu Jiaoge also unable to hide the confidence and calmness, but the thought of our current water wants to have water immediately. Just that there is a water source that seems to be more dangerous than our imagination. Suddenly, Lu Jiaoge started to develop the magic power in the hands of Lu Jiaoge. Immediately appeared another water sphere that this time faster, and fixed more than a moment after the water sphere was gradually formed. It looked extremely shiny like a lake that could reflect the image of Lu Jiao. The water power will be extremely useful. Even the people around him, He Ting, Xiao Qiu, and Lu Dongli, were also extremely happy, but constantly congratulating the shift for the beginning of the water. But instead of joy, Lu Jiaoge was breaking up to a new level. The girl who was greedy to drink Chu was still extremely craving. Immediately became awakened and not thinking about they line. That my mouth was saliva. But the taste of they, that is the number one. Little Chu, who has just wiped away the drooling on the mouth, admires Lu Jiaoge and constantly praises interesting even the country and the human body can control stars. Not long after Lu Dongli appeared, looking a bit tired, she brushed the sand off her hands and said to Lu Jiaoge, I've cleaned up all the traces we left behind. Let's go home. Seeing how meticulous and cautious Lu Dongli was attending even to the smallest details, Lu Jiaoge couldn't help but be taken aback and said, You're being too cautious. Why erase the traces? No one can sense my divine presence anymore anyway. Upon hearing that, Lu Dongli frowned and hooked up the leaf and turned it big, and told Lu Zhao Go what the god. But if the master was aimed at the end, he only had to die, so he had to put his life on his head. After a while, all four of them were present and glanced at that leaf and rushed to the sky to fly away, without knowing that Yu Yue was standing on the ground with them. Yu Yue is full of resentment of hatred for the past of Lu Zhaoge and stared at them thinking that the old name once oppressed probably about to come back. In contrast to Yu Yue's hatred, Ant King next to the side is a bit excited and also looking at them in the air thinking that this little boy Zhaoge has made big progress. Waiting for a while. Yu Yue suddenly bowed his head and frowned and thought that something wrong was wrong. Why did I feel missing? Moments later, Yu Yue again became shocked and turned back to tell Ant King, who was doing his next to the masters. Lu Zhaoge has not been breakthrough, but hearing that Ant King did not have any reaction, but still calmly responded to you, also realized that it was initialized, but I still haven't broke down Zhaoge to encounter trouble already. Ant King still looked in the air but silently prayed for Lu Zhaoge without knowing that he was very happy to sit with confidently sitting with Lu Dongli, Li Liuqiu and Hating, hoping that the boy did not happen, unfortunately. In contrast to the anxiety of some Zhaoge people currently, there is only one question in the system that suddenly appears along with the extremely much experience points of Lu Zhaoge, asking the maximum set of the promotion index, looking at the question, and the amount of experience he saved. Lu Zhaoge has increasingly wondering that he has accumulated too many experiences, and the current experience has been completed. He has completed the situation. Lu Zhaoge is still very vague against his chin, staring at the experience. But the problem is that he ultimately should increase these levels of experience. Not only can he help me in the end of the emergency, that can be promoted if I am too much to spend too many points later. The other side of Lu Dongli appeared with a pitcher of the lake water in his hands and jokingly eagerly told Xiaoqiu and Hating, who wanted to drink water, raise his hand. Probably due to the long-distance moving Hating and Xiaoqiu are happy to accept the water that each person drinks all the glasses in just a moment. At the same time, Lu Dongli also brought a glass of water to invite Lu Zhao to think about the thought of being very unexpectedly stupid to drink water. Suddenly Lu Zhaoge was fresh and grabbed the water in the hand of Lu Dongli and said the sentence that made Lu Dongli unable to understand anything, but the face of the latch increased by this level. Lu Zhaoge started to raise his head to drink water. At the same time, there was a green light appearing throughout the body of Lu Zhaoge, and Lu Zhaoge's rank also increased from LV10 to LV11 to announce the system to appear in a primitive breakthrough. LV11 to LV12, LV12 to LV13, LV13 to LV14, LV14 to LV15. From the perspective of outsiders, it was extremely panicked and unexpectedly shocked to say that the brother had just had a cup of water breakthrough in a 5-story breakthrough. Lu Zhaoge also felt that his rank also increased and immediately admitted the response, that's right. So Stranga. Suddenly from behind them, the two of them also had to panic to say, so Ant King and Yu Yue were all in a sudden panicked area, but she rolled her eyes on her mouth. She could not suck on the exclamation of the magic of Lu Zhaoge to drink a cup of water, breaking the 5 floors. He had not even sat meditation into the pure. Ant King, one hand supports the great breasts to touch the chin, but even the genius wants to break through the 5 floors, and it is difficult for it. Yu Yue suddenly said loudly, I understand, and Ant King folded her arms to observe. Yu Yue tightening the sword in her hand, saying that her analysis, Zhaoge brother was definitely intentionally stopping the brief breakthrough. So I misunderstood Zhaoge brother. He did not have to fall for him. Speaking of which, suddenly, Yu Yue again contacted himself if he put himself in the position of Lu Zhaoge. How will Yu Yue secretly complain to himself if you are you? You can hide the rings without breaking the scene for years. Like that brother doesn't. The question of himself also. Yu Yue had the answer for himself to face this. Yu Yue frankly admitted that he could not do is still not equal to that brother. Ant King from afar observed Lu Zhao with an extremely satisfied face as if predicting everything for Lu Zhaoge's situation. Nothing was too surprising to be able to explain that Ant King was satisfied to judge this kid, a 5-story glass of water, actually not too surprisingly. Ant King started to remember when Lu Zhaoge was a child anyway, from a young age. It was not like other children. Stuck in the early years, no one can see in the boy's eyes a little disappointed or resentful Lu Zhaoge when he was sleeping. He could see the smile and comfort on his face, or when practicing hard, he would still be calm and not complain. Closing a sentence, Ant King said that this boy was unable to break. Lu Dongli was a little fun with Lu Zhaoge and Cho. After eating and drinking, he started to sit out with a drum behind him, and his other hand rubbed his round stomo men to ask Hating. The brother said why the master was so excited. Hating turned to look at the other brother. Xiaoqiu seems unhappy when he has not received the answer that he wants to be too frugal. As soon as he finished, the chew was just overheated out from the mouth to fly out a mouthful of green smoke. After that, apart from the expectation around the body of the chew, covered by a flickering blue color, Chu put his glowing arm to observe, not to understand what was happening. Lu Chaoga saw that it was happy to be happy, and the first reaction was surprising that the little Chu was extremely confused because he had never encountered a situation like this before. Xiaoqiu stammered to ask the master's master. Dongli did not warn, but rushed to hug the Chu in his arms and rubbed his cheeks so happy that his eyes were not seeing the sun, saying that my disciple from today onwards, I have officially become the most prostitute, and the Chu too has heard the explanation, but it still seems to be buzzing the cell, but still have to obediently respond to a truth. The sound of a 3D screen shows an estimated notice of the subject of Momen, who is eligible to become the 9 commentaries. Wait for Lu Zhaoge to smirk, and not hesitate to eliminate, but choose to press the level, and what predestined relationship is waiting for me to come up all. The screen turns blue. The old sign of the old sign, with the words, Momen, does not intend to show up, but the words are gradually blurred. A successful promotion words appeared below the sign that changes into the words, Momen Siu Duo Sac. The solemn features with the top of the dragon. The yellow 3D notification table appears with the content of completing the task. The task reward of 1 to 5,000 experience points. The reward of the 2 tasks of the sword demonstration. Point 1. Lu Zhaoge finished reading the content of the notice table to speak alone. The indicator point is like hacking the game, but every time an increase of a point of the swordplay of the sword of our swordsman will be increased by 10% of all aspects. Lu Zhaoge opened his own index to see the show display, 700 to 700, spiritual energy, 1500. Lotus can promote the maximum level of 10 swordplay, quality, can add a maximum point of 10 charming 3, Mam Torma 5, Tan 6, fixed indicators that cannot chan, to the maximum of Lu Zhaoge feel extremely happy in the heart of the swordsman who is not the best of the sword earn. Each imagination of the prospect can unlock the Italian sword, can also make Lu Zhaoge 2 eyes glowing like a headlight, unlocking the idea, I can fly right. Then Zhaoge rubbed his chin again. If he remembered that he was wrong, Yu Yue was one of the main characters of this world that gave birth to a 10-year-old man who could do something in the sword. Lu Zhaoge looks at his indicators once again comparing himself. So his 10 powered 10 should be called Vio Ha Mi. What is the name that just thought that I saw that I used? Zhaoge to fear myself, the speculation of my whole body trembling, the corner of my lips jerked away. Just a few seconds then a ding sound rang to announce the jump of the mission 2. Lu Zhaoge looked up and mumbled so quickly and had a new task. The continuous Chanja notice shows the first types of content is the task of promoting Momen from the 9 products to the compulsory task. The reward of the task of experience points of 2,000 points, 1 point swordplay quality. Next to the notice table to Chanju to the task requirements. 1 accumulated 1,000 attendance of the subject of the schedule of the task of fame, 307 to 1,000, has not been completed. 2. In the subject with a minimum of 3 people who achieved a dual practice schedule of 1 to 3 disciples, of the subject of more than 100 people, mission schedule 10-100, Lu Zhaoge read all the notice table without expressive expression to speak alone in attendance, but want to promote a bit of a bowl of bowls is a bit annoying. At this moment, another notice jumped to the player to reach level 15 to unlock the new function of the map system. Lu Zhaoge laughed. He almost forgot to lead to the disciple can also increase the experience, even though it is only half the disciple, but it is better to have more than nothing. Lu Zhaoge pressed the button. Ding sounds on the screen appeared the words, Master Lu Qingfeng. Zhaoge involuntarily blankly looked at that name for a long time. The words that showed the name Lu Qingfeng is gray, which means that person has died. The previous memories rushed back to him to watch the guard hugging me from the delivery room when he cried. He smiled loudly. We looked in the coffin. This time we cried. He no longer laughed at me. And Lu Zhaoge bowed his face, as if he did not want to let anyone see his expression in his heart, suddenly became heavy and dreamy of this previous life. Thinking of the image of a happy mother and mother who is happy in the distance smiling, and gentle Lu Zhaoge is more determined to her father. The two of them will be assured that the child will definitely make Momen, Fat Dugong Huang Die. After watching Pastor Lu Zhaoge press to another item about my disciples revealing, the words appeared to be hating disciples level 10. Lu Zhaoge is a bit surprised, may probably focus too much on my own problems, and forget this disciple. Why do we forget it? Hating, so I should break through. Lu Zhaoge sat cross-legged with his back to look at Hating's back. This little son seemed to have not let go of that situation. Kia Lu Zhaoge called, Tu Hak. Hating heard the teacher calling himself when he immediately returned to respectfully listen to. Lu Zhaoge seriously asked you why he was still stuck in the first scene. I remembered correctly. You could break through soon. The communal house could not hide the melancholy virtual look on the face of the master's face, but could not say anything. Lu Zhaoge said that always your speculation is you still not let go of the previous situation. Referring to the previous situation, Hating remembering the unmistakable memories. Hi, there was a mysterious person appearing in the village. His face saw that he was not good, but the mysticism pretended to point at Hating when he was young and said that this man had a deeper in the future. After saying that those poisonous words, he turned away and left, without forgetting to leave a sentence of you to solve yourself, to make the people even more confused. The villagers in the village are more and less reading workers who have never stepped out of the village, so they know extremely low because of a sentence of the stranger who pretended to be the mysterious that they believed right away, because they were likely their benefits would be affected. So they would rather believe that the man's words were more than believing a weaker boy, more feared he had a good sentence to him. He had a good sentence to him. Or not. He all died, not because he was dead, or why even if he was a nun, he should definitely chase him out of the village. Between Hating being surrounded by those criticisms, suddenly there was a person who appeared loudly, the voice of the son of the head of the Momen Lu Zhaoge, and did not quickly take water for the child's son. The villagers heard the movement immediately and massively turned to see who was talking. Looking out, it was a young man with a bright face and smiling with a lot of temperament than that of wearing a very valuable person who thought that anyone now claims to be the head, but it seems that the real fairy is so beautiful. Lu Zhaoge did not bother to pay attention to the other villagers, but walked in front of Hating saying that I did not hear wrong, but you were the one who was deeply ingrained in the future, could lead to the karma of the sky. Hating at that time was not understanding anything. Tears still on the corner of his eyes saw that the person standing in front of him was so anguished he did not feel maliciously, just gently nodded as if testimony. Yet the person in front of him did not show discrimination against the opposite. He would reach his hand towards Hating saying that he is currently lacking a pupil, who swordsman, whether you are content or not, whether you have a deep ghost, or close to the sky, later, it is. Do not wait for Lu Zhaoge to finish the sentence of the villagers who want to protest the first child. This child is not normal if the future actually causes great painting. How to do? The fairy should not lead the fire a little bit of hope in Hating just now. Now the other says are really strong and broken are the stupid people that Hating has no way to object. Lu Zhaoge heard that angrily shouted all of them shut up for us so the new people were quiet again. Lu Zhaoge's next sentence made them gaping even more. From today onwards he was the disciple, Lu Zhaoge later. Regardless of what arose not only the other villagers, but even Hating, and he was not believing in his ears, but someone wanted to receive Hating as a disciple. Lu Zhaoge's sentence confidently pointed to himself to say that we are responsible. Hating no longer cried this as a miracle that was so unexpected. Hating followed Lu Zhaoge to look at the shadow of his back firmly. Lu Zhaoge brought Hating the river across the mountain and said closely and fell down, and then we also ignored it. Hating at that time was just a child who had never had to climb the mountain anyway to keep up with the speed of an adult. It was not easy, so Hating climbed and panted with pulse. But when he stepped up to the next step, Hating was stumbled again. But I thought it would fall, but there was a solid hand grasping Hating. It was Lu Zhaoge to save Hating and did not forget to make a sarcasm. You're hideous. Lu Zhaoge dragged Hating to stood firmly to continue this child, the road in front of the folding manor. Just a simple sentence like this made Hating touched. The escape has passed many years to the present. Hating is now much higher than Lu Zhaoge standing beside Hating to observe the scene ahead with the saying that the best way to create the first ghost is giving him a bravery, to give him a lasting tragic fate, to give him a ray of light later. Lu Zhaoge turned to look at Hating who was moody and said that the fishing ray would turn off. Next, Lu Zhaoge to reveal a chaotic smile, but you are different because of this ray of light. Is the most solid support of the heavenly holy realm in the future. This confident saying has successfully attracted Hating's attention. He looked up and looked at Lu Zhaoge, who was surprised to be touched by Lu Zhaoge to his face for Hating, whether he felt like there was a fog covered or not. Lu Zhaoge lifted the clouds in front of him in a circle and then disappeared. Hating opened his mouth in surprise. Looking in front of the beautiful scenery, how many birds fly and the rainbow is brilliant. Hating touched the tears of happiness, and then around his body was surrounded by the blurry blue light. The sky is brilliant as the fairy of the calendar in 14921. Hating, the great disciple of the Momen, because of observing the sky above that died, which not Egan broke the scene. The announcement shows that Hating's disciple successfully levels up to receive 5,000 experience points. Lu Zhaoge immediately laughed at the glittering light appearing around Lu Zhao. Ge thought that he was not ashamed of us teaching disciples permanently. Number 1. Xiaoqiu immediately clapped his hands to give him the bright eyes and said the master of the master. Yu Yue suddenly stammered with the exclamation of Master Lu Zhaoge so dangerous, so could it be used to use it? Yu Yue thought that at first I thought that he was not scary at first. Aunt King beside you looking at you, Yue smiling and thinking, ha ha ha, these two children is really grim. Lu Dong. Li appeared from the back of Hating, and Lu Zhaoge saying that the elder brother and Hating were all broken through the first time he could. Lu Zhaoge immediately put out his hand and said, trouble here. What did you fly by or tell Aunt King the most limited one? Lu Dongli immediately wondered what the limit is that Xiaoqiu has two bright eyes and asks to eat. Qiu's abdomen immediately cried out. Xiaoqiu immediately hugged his stomo men and said that he was hungry. Lu Zhaoge immediately crossed his arms and said that today, the duty of the elders to find somewhere down today, we will personally show their talents. Lu Dongli and Hating with both eyes were extremely sparkling. The leaf-carrying people flying in the air, cramped in the sky. Xiaoqiu hugged his feet and asked his master suddenly so quickly, Lu Dongli immediately answered, "Not to waste any more. Wait a while again, and I will understand it all." Xiaoqiu looked at the dong bewildered, thinking that the master of the master cooked well. Store at Heiting, looking for something from the basket of Heiting. The temple immediately took out the cooking food neatly ranged on the table, and swung on the table to look at the basket of Heiting, the brothers' storage box. Lu Zhaoge is on a chair calling the Chu. "Xiaoqiu here to come here for the Grand Master to teach you how to be the right priority." Xiaoqiu immediately raised his hand to wonder. Lu Zhaoge immediately smiled. Lu Dongli happily ran back to show off fish shifts. See the sisters catch 2 children. At this time, Lu Zhaoge is asking the little Chu to defeat the opponent, but the opponent still stiffened with you how to respond to him. Lu Zhaoge immediately said the example not to fall at the number. Xiaoqiu immediately folded his arms to answer, "All at you, stupid." Lu Zhaoge and Xiaoqiu immediately smashed his hand. Lu Zhaoge and praised the young Chu to teach. Lu Dongli immediately petrified on the spot and spoke, and then small Chiu was infected. Lu Dongli immediately stared at Lu Zhaoge and asked the little Chu that he felt a bit cold. He answered that he would answer. It seemed colder. Lu Zhaoge immediately asked back. Lu Dongli immediately held 2 fish to attack Lu Zhaoge, shouting away from the disciple of the sister. Lu Zhaoge immediately said, "Great fish dish appears on the plate." Lu Dongli immediately reminded Xiaoqiu to absolutely not learn from the Grand Master's Grand Master. Xiaoqiu immediately stood on his shoulders and claimed not to be afraid of Mo-men. Lu Zhaoge immediately raised his hand to look good to Xiaoqiu to say 10 points. Lu Dong, 2 rows of tears, and stuttering. Then Xiaoqiu completely couldn't save it anymore. At the top of the high mountains stand out with the line stretching through the foot of the sun, and the far away from the top of the mountain. Lu Donglin and Lu Zhaoge Xiaoqiu and Heiting are standing on a dong leaf, and said loudly, "We arrived," and suddenly burped from the throat. Lu Dongli immediately shyly covered his mouth. Xiaoqiu immediately looked at Lu Dongli, asked a master who had just burps. Lu Dongli immediately pointed to the head of the fierce Chu, saying that we didn't have that like that. Xiaoqiu laughed happily and responded by the fish of the Grand Master. Lu Zhaoge recalled the other silhouette. Lu Zhaoge thought about how hard it was to learn to cook famous dishes of both the East and the West, just to increase the sympathy with the other person there. The leaves gradually landed in front of Aunt King and Yu Yue. Aunt King calmly said, "Zhaoge Dongli." The children came back, and Yu Yue, beside the thought that clearly went silently after them, all the way, now wanted to pretend to meet at the door of the Mo-men. The master did not go down to the acting world. Lu Zhaoge stepped down to make a bag. Lu Zhaoge and Lu Dongli immediately respect Zhaoge to ask us for Aunt out for a long trip. Auntie King smiled. Aunt King, she answered that I just came to the breakthrough and not bad at Aunt King's acting. Yu Yue could not help but exclude the master's fake technique. Lu Zhaoge, with a plot, immediately bowed his head to ask Aunt King the breakthrough or the one who gave the child one of died, which chat as a reward. Aunt King pointed to Lu Zhaoge's forehead, saying, "This kid." Aunt King agreed with her children. Lu Zhaoge immediately turned to look at Yu Yue. "Questions, huh?" Lu Zhaoge immediately beat Yu Yue a plum and said that this rotten kid. Yu Yue immediately smiled and said, "Hee brother." Zhaoge immediately thought that this young man Du was so strand. If he would definitely argue with him. Lu Zhaoge thought that today, why did it look a bit enjoyed? Zhaoge imagined a horrible thing. Lu Zhaoge continued to think, "Yu Yue, it would like to like the male star." Lu Zhaoge immediately stepped back and stammered and said, "We coughed in talking." Aunt King immediately answered that if the monks have any places, Aunt King will help the children to indicate a little bit. If the monks have any places, Aunt King will help the children to point a little bit inside Aunt King, saying that there are a lot of things to ask so that the child will lead the way. When he came inside Heiting, he was more tea to Lu Zhaoge. Dongli happily said, "Thank you, Auntie King, I have finished asking." Aunt King immediately turned to look at Lu Zhaoge, asking me not to ask me. Lu Zhaoge gently enjoyed the tea and wanted to ask if there was a monk who was not considered to be very high. He should focus on breakthrough or enlightenment for a good idea. Aunt King immediately wondered that the idea of Yu Yue, also startled to think of the idea. Lu Zhaoge thought that this question was mainly because of unlocking the idea that lost 3,000 experiences, enough for me to increase the 3 levels. So it was finally a breakthrough, or a dangerous idea. Aunt King immediately regained the calm and responded to Zhaoge according to the reason that said the sword as soon as possible. Auntie King explained that ancient herself, the peak swordsmanship, were the ones who could enlighten the idea earlier than the mortal. After enlightenment of the idea, every time a breakthrough would make the strength increase the TU without any intentions. After the increase in the monk, increased like pouring an additional glass of water. But if there was an idea, it would turn into a glass or a half. Even 2 glasses of 2 glasses, 2 glasses of 2 glasses, 2 glasses. Aunt King thought it was just that even though the sword was very important to the sword, Zhaoge's strength wanted to enlighten the idea that it was too far away if it still let this concern for this fear that it would be useless to waste time wasting time. Lu Zhaoge immediately stood up and stated that Aunt King, I understood, and would quickly enlighten the idea of certain ideas without helping her. Aunt King immediately choked on the coughing up the voice. Yu Yue immediately got up and asked quickly to find this idea. Lu Zhaoge calmly asked why you could not say that it couldn't be. that it was impossible for you to find an idea that I would not want to enlighten it. Yu Yue recalled myself before thinking only to enlighten a little bit of the idea that I had to pray for myself to put myself in the boundary of the life and death. If compared to the AG, we enlightened the idea earlier than the contemporary swordsmanship 1 year. Yu Yue recalled the image of himself bowing his head in front of the name Kiev Ton. Yu Yue thought that I could not say what you want to say. Lu Chaoga thought this boy. Lu Chaoga immediately angry, it turned on and dared to know my hand. Lu Dongli looked at Chaoga thinking about the disease again. But now I can't say that brother is not right. Lu Dongli is determined to think because he has to protect the face of the Singer. Aunt King immediately laughed and said that these two kids were a bit conflicted. I heard that Yu Yue had gained a little bit of a good idea. Aunt King calmly continued to continue the two of you fighting a match. Lu Chaoga and Yu Yue overwhelmed the will to respond. Aunt King immediately made the law. We only compare the idea of Yu Yue to suppress the realm to come down to the similarity with Zhao Ge to ensure that Yu Yue's justice will answer it. Lu Chaoga and Yu Yue each one on one side. Yu Yue immediately clasped his hands and said that he was invited to be invited to the sword. After saying that, Yu Yue pulled out a blue and sounded a tinkling. The sound of the wind blowing through creates the courage of Yu Yue. Lu Dongli immediately's eyes widened and exclaimed that Yu Yue's good sword was so good. Aunt King said the 3 children were all the top swords of the sword. Of course, it would be no less surprised at what it was. Lu Dongli immediately laughed. Xiaoqiu immediately pulled the skirt to ask Master Yu Yue and Master. Lu Dongli immediately explained. Many Yu Yue. Hu is one of the most prominent people of this generation of Tan Chao, can also be considered the strongest person in this generation. Xiaoqiu thought to the whole generation. Xiaoqiu immediately crossed his arms and said that it seemed that the Grand Master Bathon was sure. Lu Dongli immediately bewildered at this affirmation of the little Chu. Yu Yue pulled out the sword and then asked Lu Zhao, Ge brothers still not exported to the sword. Lu Zhao shook his head and said someone would die. Yu Wei immediately used the ability to ask, did you think we didn't deserve it? Yu Yue flew a rumbling high sound of the sky as if it was flooded by the flames. Yu Yue's eyes want to burn. Yu Yue angrily shouted loudly Lu Chaoga. Lu Chaoga immediately said, no, you will misunderstand me. Lu Chaoga thinking that I am looking for 9 years, not to wait for you. Lu Chaoga holding. The sword has not pulled out the shell to surf the sword that has not been friction with the ground to create a sound. Lu Chaoga Fifi Tong talk loudly not to talk anymore. Yu Yue also flew to shout brothers and sisters who did not want to withdraw the sword, and they had to withdraw. The two of them rushed into each other due to fighting with water sparks still appearing on the floor with the sounds. The sword of 2 people touched each other to form a huge tinkling. Xiaoqiu shining eyes spoke of the Grandmaster. Aunt King immediately exclaimed, only based on these techniques. But now it is really not easy to worry about saying, if they continue the shift, they will lose. Yu Yue attacked Lu Chaoga. Yu Yue said loudly to find a sword I told you to export. Yu Yue slashed a sound of the sound of Lu Chaoga and went down to create a sound. Lu Chaoga said you have not made your intention to get out, but I want to force me. Yu Yue immediately responded to me. The flames were gathered to one place on the sword. A shock rang out, the flame stretching from the sword to the blade. In the pocket of Dong Li, the tinkling sound of a tinkle loudly thought that his sword was influenced by Yu Yue's intention. And this is the idea. But strangely Lu Zhaoga's sword was stable, as not Lu Zhaoga immediately sarcasm. Suddenly, the red flame immediately turned into black. The fierce sounds of Yu Yue. Only the white iris says, this is the most powerful way of Lu Zhaoga to beat the rumbling sound still fiercely. The black flame emanating from Yu Yue surrounding the field. The flame surrounded by Lu Zhaoga created the sound of Lu Zhaoga thinking. So this is the distance between, and there is no idea. Lu Zhaoga immediately responded to understand. Lu Zhaoga continued to unlock. The notice resounded the opening of the idea to accept 100,000 EXP. The notice resounds the level of an idea of 100,000 XP. Yu Yue immediately used her skill to find a rumbling sound. Yu Yue shouted here. Yu Yue thinks Zhaoga brother, please review yourself. You can only chase me. A black missile appeared to attack straight to Lu Zhaoga. The rocket flew to Lu Zhaoga just standing. Lu Dongli shouted and carefully shouted at Aunt King, thinking that Yu Yue's sword, once it was performed, would not be able to get back today, seeing that it is not ashamed to be the sword art that is passed down by the sword. Just no one is allowed to hurt Zhao Ge in front of Aunt King. The posture is prepared to use skills. Aunt King immediately surprised Aunt King was bewildered to think Zhao Ge, I was going to make Aunt King surprised again. Lu Chaoga has discovered the skill of Yu Yue. Lu Chaoga to create a light round swallowed the black rocket of Yu Yue. Yu Yue immediately bewildered that this was the sound of the black fire in the hands of Yu Yue. Lu Dong's bag began to move faster than the tinkling sound, keen on the sound forever. Lu Dongli immediately shouted the enlightened Singer to find the idea. Xiaoqiu immediately said that the master of the masters was like a fairy in the water painting, and no one expected that the little Chu had seen it. Then made the girls many years later feel that the boys they met were not worth it to mind. Lu Chaoga's eyes slowly opened. Lu Chaogu's 2 fingers are still clamping on Yu Yue's sword to stop the attack. Lu Chaoga calmly said to find the idea. Yu Yue could not help but eagerly. Yu Yue recalled the silhouette of my master, thinking this familiar feeling. Lu Zhaoge immediately smiled and continued not only to spend a little gray matter. Zhaoge waved a black flame of Yu Yue and scattered Yu Yue and shouted to be a complete idea of this. Yu Yue shouted loudly, I didn't believe it. Yu Yue continued to shout loudly, I did not believe, and slashed down a sword. Lu Zhaoge immediately waved the black flame from the sword again. Yu Yue even more attacked. Yu Yue still says, I don't believe it. Yu Yue swung the sword, a loud shout, I did not believe. Zhaoge again. The sword immediately flew up to hear a crop. The sword falls to create a sound of the sky, and the sky is also the moment that marks the end of this battle. Lu Zhaoge at this time, right on the neck of Yu Yue, saying, you lost already. Yu Yue was defeated slightly out of the person, who couldn't help but wonder why this is like this. How many things he had to do to get, as he used to manipulate the monk, to practice the sword. Each with the same player of the dangerous talent has also used to the same animal. It is because of how much I have to pay for. Recalling the calm face of Lu Zhaoge just now, he just said the 3 words I understood, and this made Yu Yue feel that he was humiliated with his 2 teeth bite tightly together. His dark face seemed to also giving off the intense killing intent. Yu Yue bowed his head in a low voice, but he had something to do. With Zhaoge. Lu Zhaoge performed the magic of the relaxed person who appeared in the middle of the wind in front of Yu Yue. He did not say much. Half of his face glanced at Yu Yue to say a word. Yu Yue stood with the sunlight behind him, his face and expression hidden in shadow. Only his voice could be heard speaking slowly. Senior brother Zhaoge. Yu Yue was reading in the sword pavilion. Since ancient times, those who came before have said that upon reaching the 3rd realm, one should not hastily yearn for sword intent, but instead focus on diligent cultivation. I too once sought guidance from the sword venerable. The venerable told me that with my aptitude, being able to comprehend sword intent at the 3rd realm is already a great achievement. He suddenly raised his head in his eyes, and still red silk resentment to losing his mind towards Lu Zhaoge questioned. Yu Yue not understanding how Zhaoge brother ended up. Lu Zhaoge stood in the yellow leaf wind in the direction of flying on the clothes of both of them. Also fluttering at this breeze, his voice resounded. Yu Yue, you can freely refer to the records of the previous people who have the senior, instructing the disciple as if standing on the shoulder of the giant. So, the sunlight shines on the half of Lu Zhaoge's face. He glanced at. Yu Yue's eyes calmly asked if he had stood on the shoulder of the giant. The star did not look far away. He stood in the sunlight of the sun as if he emitted a glory. His mouth looked slightly smiling, and asked Yu Yue another question that was created not for us to overcome. Nguyen heard these words. The eyes were wide open, as if enlightenment was something muttering to the last sentence of history for us to overcome. Not far away, Lu Dongli looked at the silhouette of the 2 people under the light she suddenly saw helplessly, and began to start again. And then, Yu Yue put hands on the ceremony, with Lu Zhaoge the shadow of teenagers, eager to learn and absorb it, so the mind of Zhaoge brother is still too far away. Lu Dongli saw this scene. The warning bell in his head was panicked to the eyes and not broken. Yu Yue was assimilated already. Yu Yue looks at Lu Zhaoge's back and seriously asks. Yu Yue still has a question that wants to ask Zhaoge brother, since he started to feel the idea. Lu Zhaoge suddenly brought his eyes down to look at the sword in his hand, without answering the question of, Yu Yue right. He did not show any expression of long hair hidden at the bottom of his eyes, calmly speaking since we started holding the sword in hand. Hearing the words that Lu Zhaoge just uttered, Yu Yue Aunt King Lu. Dongli was shocked for a while, all 3 muttered in her mouth, from the time of holding the sword. Sword Lu Zhaoge found this expression of them were a bit satisfied, but thought that I did not lie, but I used the experience of unlocking the sword. But the experience point was because I had accumulated from the beginning of the sword to be completely unable to speak, even though I was hacked, but I was a hard-working hacker. Yu Yue once again bowed his head to celebrate with him, respectfully saying, Yu Yue understood. Aunt King put her hand on the tears on the corner of the protest with very touching thinking that Zhaoge always knows how to train the mind for you. You the 2 are good friends of each other. But now Yu Yue has approached Lu Zhaoge once again opening. Zhaoge brothers, but still has a problem. But Lu Zhaoge started looking at him with his eyes and thought like, looking at the strand, creature his head was full of questions, so many things. But Yu Yue's gaze on the sword of Lu Zhaoge asked the brother's brother to borrow your sword. Suddenly Lu Zhaoge looked at him with an eye that seemed to be threatened to be dead. He looked at the slow-hearted sword speechless, and spoke 9 years without shell, and this sword was not what we were preparing for the disciple. Nguyen suddenly remembered something suspicious, or thought because of that. It happened a long time ago, and that year there was a mysterious love that made Tan Chao encountered Lu Zhaoge's parents. 2 people who have the power to overcome love for the same because they die. At the moment, Yu Yue seriously thought that if he really did it, because the other loved one brought all his enthusiasm for 9 years, he told himself that he was not worthy, wearing the sword on the shoulder of Lu Zhaoge, walking forward to say, with the voice, that it will be the day when the shell will be the day we revenge. Yu Yue standing behind to look at his resolute back. The bright moon shone down on the climbing rocky mountains to reveal the beauty of its night. Lu Zhaoge walked on a secret path to calculate a little Aunt King and Yu Yue who wanted to stay here for a few days. Aunt King was okay. She probably wanted to help me cultivate the Dharma to the astronaut. Somewhere Aunt King was practicing the legal battle in the room, suddenly sneezing a loud voice. She reached out and swiped her nose to silently muttered speculating according to her own life experience. So she left Zhaoge a more defensive battlefield of the boy's appearance that was easily harmed by others. Thinking of it, she couldn't help but sigh for an hour, but her hand was still cultivating the legal battle for Lu Zhaoge to a cube box that appeared with many charms enough to see how much enthusiasm. But on this side, Lu Zhaoge is both helpless and depressed when I think of Yu Yue and the name of the young son Yu Yue. Because compared to me, and the third enlightenment is my third time, and a match that enlightened the third time. Remember the image of Yu Yue Lu, Zhaoge showing his face to hate this little boy, looking at him as if he looked at the idiot and saying something that would be able to ponder all that he could master the idea of the main character of this world. Suddenly, Lu Zhaoge remembered that he was not an ordinary person who was enlightened to the truth of life, but he used to hack. But why did he admire the main character? He put his hand up and rubbed his chin. The corner of his mouth showed a more cunning smile and was even more satisfactory that he had broken through the new time, and then the new law was waiting for me. After a while, the moonlight went down to a simple tomb on an empty ground. Lu Zhaoge went to the front of the stile with a smiling face, happily using his hand to knock cock into the beer, and then asked if he could serve it. From the higher earth tissue to a purple image, it is still be bewildered with naive. Lu Zhaoge stood in front of him to observe his whole person, and asked the servant who discovered that the Grand Master today had any difference in his heart. He thought that this palace was not very good, but heard that his strength could see himself, not just breaking out. But the pastime went like a dog running outside the field of Hung and Lu Zhaoge. Looking at each other full of love, were silent, but it looked very dumb. Lu Zhaogu's gaze suddenly became a criticism, clearly releasing the judgment eyes, and opened his mouth to say that you didn't realize that I was breaking through. Why did you not show anything? Suddenly the tail of the Hung point pointed to his hand to look in the direction of the tail. Lu Zhaoge helplessly, his body winked like losing all his energy to live, and trembled to look at the servant, like a man who did not wear heavenly heaven. Without giving the blood to the person he would not respond to us, not to afford the effort of the person who helped Mo Men for a few hundred years of life. After saying that, he put his hand up. He developed the magic on the ring on his index finger. Then, it formed the shape of a Lu Zhaoge to recite the steadfast gaze in the heart of thinking a few things, although this servant was robot, but also estimated with Mo Men. She protected Mo Men safely, but every attorney general had to pay a little price. Later on, the two fingertips of Lu Zhaoge appeared. A small spot here is blood. It seems that this is very expensive, so after finishing the fact that he has to stop breathing for a long time for his father every month, he takes her a spiritual spirit that does not know why the thing to give to her is to give her the blood of people. Says that the planet mixes with 10 drops of blood to produce a drop of Lu Zhaoge, as if turning into a ghost with all blood, with all people who lose her life and throw the blood of the palace of Feng. Seeing the drop of blood flying towards me, I was excited to fly to it. Welcome the drop of blood into the mouth of the nest, but chewing your hands and waving, contentment is full of life. On the contrary, Lu Zhaoge looked at the palace filled with vitality, showing that the weak price lamented the happy person. So why our spirit is all sucked by the person, and buzzing here without medicine, if the condition of the person who is too big, we really do not want to meet. As soon as his words had just stopped above the stone stile appearing, a hole inside was the source of power being released outside. A moment later, a roll of paper appeared. It was called Moisture the Second, class of medium class. Holding the paper roll in Lu Zhaoge's hand is quite pleased to think that this robot not only helps protect Mo Men. Mo Men can also give the Dharma level, why he is satisfied with this practice in Tien 012501 Hayen. The French world of each sect is not fixed. Each person has the same way of self. Population, a lamb level is difficult to find, and so that it can make the book of the book happy. And our determination can turn the surrounding spirit into a liquid, and then enter the body like drinking water. So the thesis of 108 ways to drink the east wind, and even the thesis on how to turn the air into water, is very suitable for our water power. Lu Zhaoge smirked the corner of her mouth that showed a smile, that the smile was that the decline of moisture, for even the top swordsman of Tan Chao, was considered to be the Qibao. But at this time, Lu Zhaoge just paid attention to a point that made him astonished. The words of the middle. Class death in his eyes, Lu Zhaoge stupidly thought he looked at the wrong middle-medium product. He looked at the eyes of Hung a little urgently, to ask for the wrong person who brought the wrong star. This is the middle class. But the offering floating opposite him said not a word, its whole body dazed and blank. Lu Zhaoge, too, remained motionless, his face unreadable, neither joy nor sorrow yet, just as dazed. Did you really give the wrong one, sir? He asked, stunned. A moment later, the offering still said nothing, but its head tilted side to side, making crackling sounds, crack, crack, as if to express disagreement. Seeing its strange posture, Lu Zhaoge froze in place. his whole body stiffening, and asked, "What on earth is wrong with you?" The book in the hands floating emits a mysterious purple light. Lu Zhaoge, looking at him, he does not take his eyes off, and thinks in the heart of the moisture atmosphere of the servant. Each of the book has a different level, after the benefit even has the potential to become a god of law star. Come to think of Lu Zhaoge's face showing a look at his promising future, a deep smile so deeply if it is really so, my blood can still try to squeeze a few more drops. Lu Zhaogu's face revealed the mountain and laughed at the pung to open the seduction, or the one who gave the remaining decisions for us to go again to bring the blood to the people. But the offering at that moment was still frozen, saying nothing at all, looking so lifeless. It was as if someone had created a statue, perpetually stiff, like a Mo Menhain, stuck in standby mode. He turned his back to be complacent and pretended to say why he could understand that the person was, because he was not only so, he was too familiar with it. The tail of the Feng raised up a few times as if waving goodbye Lu Zhaoge. He leaned slightly to the side, watching the offering's stiff movements, then let out a chuckle. Still know how to say goodbye, huh? You only cheer up after absorbing my essence blood, but looking at it from another angle, I'm technically still a virgin, you know. Another place is collapsed, and sitting on the ground, both of them, without lamenting vitality, can be like that. But Xiaoqiu stood beside her, hand on her shoulder very well, and confidently said that the master should not cry later. Lu Dongli turned his head, with tears full of tears, because he was like that. So I was desperate in her heart. She was screaming in despair. Mo Men, we were alone. She was more than enough, and now added a disciple. Like the one on the street, would be beaten to death by people. Xiaoqiu is still very optimistic that the master is praising himself. He is attached to himself to a height to be a unique child who does not look at his disciples and cannot say a word. 2 rows of tears streaming down the face of Lu Dongli wrote on the words that no longer raw to live. This child's brain disease is also equal to 3 parts of the Sinjur, and then I have to Chanji the way to protect the girl. She took her hands to grasp the shoulder of the little Chu. The gaze looked straight at her, and then said very seriously, "From now on, after the mountain, I was not allowed to say that I was the disciple of Lu Dong Li Xiaoqiu, wondering my master for a long time." The eyes of Lu Dong slightly narrowed her eyebrows and frowned into the deep voice. Xiaoqiu listened to the master's instructions, that his eyes widened his face. Until the time when master carried the collar to throw out the door of the queue, he still stupidly did not understand the words of the master, who said that he did not explain much in his heart. Lu Dongli recalled the image of Lu Zhaoge telling her bedtime stories, and her whole body suddenly trembled. In the stories he used to tell her there were countless geniuses, yet none of them had any particular hobbies, only a deep passion for showing off. They'd provoke others, get into fights, first beating the disciples, then the masters, then the elders, and finally the patriarchs. In short, they followed the family tree and seniority line, beating their way up generation by generation. She looked at the little Chu, who went out of the small silhouette and danced very hard, and could not help but think about the future, whether anyone later because of Xiaoqiu who came here. The more you think you are afraid of biting your nails and your heart is extremely insecure, or I transferred her to the shift. But thinking about the cute face and gesture that could not be discussed by the small enemy, hesitated to the face and eyes when eating anyone who could not love. She sighed and muttered a few options that seemed more feasible than 2, or increased the amount of knowledge for her. So if she had hit the child, she had to play old. So I just need to make sure no one can beat the child. So if no one will beat the small Chu, I don't have to worry about it. At this method, 2 eyes are bright, as if they have found the philosophy of life. She looked at the moon that was illuminating on the porch, making a great determination, and then putting her hand on the moon starting from today, looking up to get the moon's witness to the voice of Lu Dongli. If the Chu was not cultivated into a certain talent, it would not be able to go down the mountain to avoid her causing trouble. I would like to get the sentence that was interrupted behind the dong just now, but now my eloquent now drops and lost half of the weapon. She shook her head to be awake. While confusing in the beginning of the dollar, there was a new idea, right? As a younger sister who loves his brother, he bravely raised his hand to make a note that I would like to take the life of the song of Lu Dongli to make a very deep brotherhood. After completing the procedures of anti-2 hand-to-hand determination with myself, everything is prepared, and I absolutely cannot teach a disciple like Luo Bing anymore. In another place, a regular body, sitting alone around the lake of trees and flowers, are enough to create a romantic scene of the young girls back in the water, slightly joking with the butterfly. But the saying of Lu Dongli seems to be only this girl who definitely cannot have an additional disciple, that it is a disciple it wants to make my sister. The young woman joked with her butterfly, her lips with a full smile as if she was enjoying her herself. On a cliff? Lu Zhaoge is sitting and cultivating in the big moonlight, a beautiful scene that is hard to describe, in his words being broken by his sneezing, from saying that he is using his life experience to think who is talking badly in me. So, Lu Zhaoge sitting on the rock, he said to leave the new experience of the new experience is the most important thing. Lu Zhaoge started to close his eyes to use the method to cultivate the spiritual energy of the incarnation. When conducting cultivation around him, there were many blue lights hovering around Lu Zhaoge when cultivating adventure weapons. Experience scores increased quickly. Zhaoge leads the spirit of the spiritual energy to accumulate experience points in a fast-washing manner. But in fact, purifying is no different from direct injection of air and blood vessels. To think that it feels painful, why the moisture gas is also known as the sutra. He painfully stopped cultivation and thought that it was so painful tonight. He tiredly leaned on the stone. Lu Zhaoge looked up at the large and splendid moon, muttering to cultivate the law to accumulate experience could not be a little more comfortable. Then he told him to silently wish to give him a dharma to be religious. He secretly wished to give himself the dharma after finishing the practice. Would he think that if it really happened? As soon as I thought, Lu Zhaoge thought of every day. I was two and a few dozen long-legged sisters, and then he immediately thought of the outcome when he was exhausted, and each set of dry corpses was worried that he would not be so excessive and died. At this moment there were two familiar airflows flying to him, or it was suspicious. From far away, Aunt King, along with the younger brother, is using the leaf to fly to Lu Zhaoge. Lu Zhaoge saw what he immediately asked Aunt King Aunt here to come here. Auntie King, in the moonlight, like a fairy, said the dharma of her son had trained and then prepared to return to the subject, so she wanted to personally come and give it to the younger brother on one side to speak up, but he did not care about the disciple. Lu Zhaoge just made an unable to rush to his Aunt King nucleus. Aunt King, she really has to go. Hearing him say that, Aunt King immediately put his hand on his head and said that his son King's king was so free. Then she took the dharma to give Lu Zhaoge, which one was my child, to preserve it. Looking at the leaf in Aunt King, Lu Zhaoge extremely surprised, because it belongs to the laminating line of the most information died, which chat, the hidden effect, once launched the great battle, after using automatically returning to the original item. More horrible for him when he realized that that died which chat was the dharma bow, to move the emperor of the royal Aunt King, also helped him down a hidden battle that made it a lower dharma, level dharma. He was happy to hug that bow in his heart to think that Aunt King was most sorry to himself and was so touched with a joyful face. Aunt King saw him silent for a long time, asked why she liked it, but she thought with Zhaoge's ability, now maybe she had not seen the dharma battle she prepared for him. Zhaoge immediately replied that I felt that it was a bit unusual, and then he immediately collected the dharma to go to the ring. Upon hearing that Aunt King told me that I had to practice well later, I could see through my Aunt King that thinking that I could see the chat bow a little abnormal boy. Lu Zhaoge heard that and raised his fist. The spirit of said, certainly, but also because the whole life will definitely practice well. Hearing these two words, Aunt King also ignored his sentence because of his life. The old memory immediately appeared in the minds of Aunt King A. The goal of life is to live up to 500 years old. This is the purpose of the fairy Tu. She remembered the image of the first battle with the monster, could not help but think of his dream. So why then defied the life and fighter? On this side, Lu Zhaoge also looked towards the moon over the high nostalgic mother. Once said that she had to live until 500 years old, but she went so early we would wish her every year, so at least I had to live until she was 500 years old. Referring to the sister King also, a little sad, she said she knew and turned out to be so. Aunt King gave Lu Zhaoge a secret book to tell Zhaoge in my NGO, Giant Hat, recorded the method of training 10 simple types of guarantee. If I liked it, I could try a little bit more and more. If I could see through the office, that I could lower myself and cultivate the instrument training. Receiving the secret book. Lu Zhaoge, I couldn't help but be surprised to think about nothing, but I was also skilled by the skill book. After that, Aunt King turned to say so what to go home. Receiving the dharma with the unexpected book made him happily waved, yes please go smoothly. The high-ranking brother, who was still eaten with butter, still said that his brother also, Lu Zhaoge, absolutely did not care about Yue to now and then glide. Lu Zhaoge waved goodbye and said that Aunt King was free to remember to play. When Aunt King had just left a sword from flying, passed through Lu Zhaoge. The sword is tightly plugged on the foundation ground. He looked at the serious face, clicking his tongue with the liver not small. Introducing a little sword tong is the strongest subject, Than Chao. One of the 4 great peaks of the sword tong dominated 300 sects. These subjects turn into the upper class, but Momen in Habach Tong is low at the bottom of the skirt, the most powerful subject from the bottom. Zhaoge frantically tore off the letter that Momen sent to him to say, Habach Mon, the honor of what the demon but the fake, as much as the blooming, is not the same. Not as if it was true that the names of this lack of blow were in, a little higher than Momen, the middle level of the lower level. He glanced in disdainful eyes and said that the middle level was strong. Zhaoge slammed the down Kiev bar in his hand, saying a middle class sect of the middle floor now dare to be greasy to the Momen. Why is it more and more crazy? He explained the ancient result of ancient consequences of Kangjin men, Momen the Daemon and 3 sects that coexisted within a radius of 100 km around here. But in this area was the scope of Momen, originally Momen, so they did not expect to stay and want to counter customers into the owner. He darkened his hand and used the spell that he had previously been Mo Menmo, who invited 3 factions to compete with Kang Jinmen to see his father falling down and wanted to climb on the head of Mo Men. If you want to do it in front of me, you are worthy. After saying, Lu Chaoga wrote on the sword with a word. Then he waved his hand to return it to the owner from the right place. The sword flies through the mountains and lands at the Kim Mon. Inside, the owner of Lin Long and Xiatu Mon Kang Jin Men, who was sitting and played. She turned to Xiatu to flatter him and said that he said the owner of Kan Kim became growing and becoming the top of the 100 miles around here was just sooner or later. Hearing that the name of the man who laughed and laughed, haha mo. Men now only relied on a great name as full of fullness, like Lu Zhaogei, the road of the Manga sect. But only the great monastery is not the jokes of the world. When he was talking, his sword was returned. Xiatu glanced at the eyes. Quickly catch the sword. He happily said he was quick, but that wild name was probably trembling in a corner now. Lin Long on one side, curious to see if it wrote something to want to worship. And then she laughed happily. Haha. If it was now a new age of morality, Mo Men had to be humble for a long time. Hearing that Xiatu happily agreed to let us see what this name did, just say, he opened it. Make the intention inside the illusion massively flowing out. Create a word scene, making the two old grandparents bewildered, crazy, and annoyed. Lin Long did not believe that this wobbly name should have written things like they want to submit or what. Seeing the attitude of Lu Chaoga so arrogant, Xiatu furious smashing the table. It is true that the illusionary green beans are also vanished, and at this time, Jia Tiu is angry and cursed at the unfortunate man. Lin Long on one side is also cold, nothing excellent, but still confident, like that is really a man. She immediately turned to tell Xiatu Mon. It is true that Died Ke heard that Ha's head also agreed. We were quickly planning to tell him what it was to be the strength of Vaitan. Scenes to Mo Men peaceful. The high-ranking conference of the two Gate Zhao Gei and the ceremony are discussing with each other 3 days later. The 3 monks, 3 sects, needed to go with you. Lu Chaoga's face now clearly showed the contempt for the tea, saying no need to rely on that force that was hidden. Hearing that she obediently consulted him, so I was less hidden from the TU showing more and more. Lu Chaoga narrowed his lazy eyes and said that he did not obediently look after the good sect. The two of them were talking, when suddenly the space became extremely romantic, roses flying in the air. Zhao Gei could not think of the green sister, and this sexy feeling, Le Dongli at the beginning was bewildered, saying that Luo Bing broke the official and saw the actions of his disciples. Like that was a bit frustrated, and said this first, how quickly it was breakthrough, and he should have been in retreat for 30 to 50 years, but so frustrated. Seeing Dongli a bit uncomfortable with his disciples' retreat, Zhao Gei showed his quick question marker Soot, who disliked his disciples so much. After saying that, he quickly pointed to the disciples and compares to look at the beauty of our disciples and then looking back at the disciples, but still not satisfied why his owner pointed at himself. Hei Ting he proved to be difficult to understand. Hearing the words of the Dongli not only was angry, but also angered to beat the table, a banging up angrily looking at Zhao Gei, seeing his Soot angry. Zhao Gei immediately scared and difficult to ask why his Soot was so angry like that. Dongli quickly ran to Zhao Ge and immediately taught him a lesson. She had just pinched her cheeks on the cheeks of Zhao Gei and scolded me to like her. But I would not agree to hear the confusing words from Ms. Zhao Gei. I did not understand anything, but because the pain was so much, I just told me I did not agree with the demon, but I stopped my hands. I stopped my hand. I stopped my hand. I could stop my hand. I could stop my hands. I could stop my hands. I could stop my image. But it seemed that Dong Li could not hear Zhao Ge's pleading words, but now her mind only thought about the disciples of the disciples with her singing. She was even more angry to think more and more painful why her disciple kept wanting to make her sister-in-law riding her neck. The conversion is the colorful frame of the outer wall. Tan Lao along with that is the introduction of Bing Nhi. We are 6-year-old Luo Bing. We are sold by our father in the long bar. And after that introduction was a splendid lady with the loan on the beginning from the gate of Tan Lao. No one else was Luo Bing. When she grew up, she was raised by her grandmother in Tan Lao. 5 years to teach us a lot of words, from reading books to how to lead the male man. Seeing that the splendid beauty has come out, everyone is extremely noisy, but appreciates, even if she has just seen her figure. This is the name of this time. The appearance is so beautiful that today is her 11-year-old birthday, is still the first night. This time I will definitely have her equal to her. Listening to the words of slump from the Strangi and infamous Gate Luo Bing, a little fear of clenching his hands again. Not only that she immediately breathed gently, and so as not to wait for a long time, PhD. B quickly delivered Bing Nhi and started the auction for tonight to sell thousands of gold from Bing Nhi's golden year to officially start the starting price of 10 taels of silver. Hearing the auction, everyone began to fight for Bing Nhi, and the auctions immediately spoke from one person to another. 15 tiles of silver and gradually increased to 20 tiles of silver, of 21 tiles of silver. Hearing the man next to him, who was also competing for the woman who was excited to fight with each other quickly, and challenge the challengee that you need to make a little bit of the price. Seeing that there are so many Bung children's paintings, other prostitutes upstairs are extremely jealous of saying bad words with Luo Bing. This name, the appearance of the first night will make these gate have such a gesture that is listening to the price, as much as that is also alternating to the upper 30 of the first night. There are many people who have the two people, 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 who have the two people. These are all names that only look at the appearance. Listening to the words of the prostitutes, there was a prostitute who also participated in the conversation that continued to come here and did not look at the appearance. Referring to her appearance, there is a prostitute who feels discontent for herself, and then speaks up and flattering ourselves, not only as the superior talent, but also as pure as the flute flower, but we do not know anything but more. She stopped a little and pointed to her chest and continued. The new chest is a bit so comparable to us the mailman does not know how to look at the goods. And continue to transform the return to the auction that is happening extremely exciting with the increasing auctions of 35 tile, 32 tile. When I was looking for a very happy atmosphere out there, the woman was waiting to be sold after that curtain. She was extremely deep. She was not happy, but thought that they would complain about how much they were bustling. We were suffering so much. The sadness of humanity was not the same inherent. The one of the most vigilant among the chaotic trash will have a prince like an angel that takes us out of this place, but escaped from his thoughts of delusion, is a devastating truth about her fate. But more than anyone else, we know that dreams are forever just dreaming. But after her lines of thoughts, there was a sound of a stranger that resounded for 1,000 taels of silver. Everyone was extremely surprised and curious of the owner of that sentence, because 1,000 taels of silver were too large for a girl who was extremely confused and turned around to look back. Tan Lao's main door opened and a boy was clasped his hands behind and casually walked in, and continued to say 1,000 tiles of silver of this girl and no one else. The owner of the sentence just now was Lu Zhaogay, and next to the side there was a dong. But when looking at everyone, a young man cursed at this boy who was crazy and how many thousands of taels of silver for the first night, so much money were so much. There was no place to spend so crazy, but stupid. But in contrast to the bewildered scenery below above, Tuba is extremely happy to face because she has received a big relationship, immediately welcoming this prince. A moment of spring pepper is also worth the eye. And Bing Nhi immediately opened the curtain to look at the person who was preparing to buy himself. Seeing the shape of the young son, Bing Nhi immediately thought this prince was not bad, but probably no different from the people here. Hearing the words of Tuba Zhaoge, he said that anyone who said that, we only bought this golden night, this lady will lead away. Hearing Zhaoge's words, the space is like standing still. And more than anyone else, the person who is extremely surprised is that Bing Nhi thinks. Hearing such a request, Tuba did not think but agreed to say 1,000 taels of silver of thousands of taels of silver, leading to actually we still have a bit of words anyway. The back and forth was so good, Tu immediately did not hesitate to push Bing Nhi to Zhaoge, excitedly said, and stood out to do anything quickly to the owner of your owner. Because of being pushed unexpectedly, Bing Nhi's head forged accidentally fell. But she did not care. Now she only knew that she had been kneeling and knelt at the owner. Seeing that, Zhaoge smirked, and loudly ordered to pick up. After 2 words of Zhaoge, suddenly the wind blows up the flying papers around the floor. Bing Nhi was extremely bewildered, and looked at that wonderful scenery, and immediately remembered that night my birthday was like the angel of the angel. The measles were crazy, and smiled, and offered the contract in front of Lu Zhaogay, saying that this was a contract of sale. From now on, she had belonged to him, and was led by a handsome guest like a prince. Another girl in Tan Lao stopped in the ears, whispering if he said he wanted to buy me the will to give up the ransom of another girl. Tuba Nu played Luo Bing to remind me not to quickly call the owner. Luo Bing, through the blurred head towel, looked at the figure of the man in front of the hand holding a smiling contract. Luo Bing thought he was from now on as his owner of his own contract in his hand, but not waiting until Luo Bing spoke up, Lu Zhaoge suddenly tearing up the contract, making many pieces of pepper swinging and throwing away, and even more from now on she is free. Lu Zhaogu's medium actions made everyone witnessed in astonishment, especially the other gate who uttered this kid crazy and then tore the whole contract to sell themselves for 1,000 taels of silver to buy back. Luo Bing also widened his eyes, and no one would have expected that Lu Zhaoge would make such action. She smiled as if she had her own decision. Later she would follow the prince, whether to have a semi-body contract or not. Lu Zhaoge politely put out his hand and told Luo Bing. Luo Bing was also very obediently. Then put his hand on the ivory pearl table to be carefully cared for. At this moment, Lu Dongli was disguised as a man and broke in between the 2 people who laughed and grabbed Luo Bing, saying that the little girl would take me to lead me. The night falls on the moonlight, hanging high like a giant glowing ball. The beautiful cancer will be more beautiful when people feel happy in the 3 people. Zhaoge Dongli and Luo Bing take each other out of the long bar in the street. Higher hanging lanterns more brilliantly adorn the night sky to create a beautiful scene in the picture. Luo Bing, curious mixed with happiness, watching this scene, exclaiming, "Beautiful lighthouse. This is the first time I have been coming out there." Lu Dongli stands next to him and says he will see many more beautiful places in the future. Luo Bing did not respond, but stared at Lu Zhaoge in his eyes filled with love. Make the dong from the position between the 2 hours, naturally, the bright light bulb even brighter than the moon. Lu Dongli frowned and carelessly think why she kept looking at the song forever without looking at me. Meanwhile, Luo Bing has completely turned to Lu Zhaoge, but we have seen the most beautiful thing in this world, and do not know whether Lu Zhaoge has noticed the conversation of the two of them or not. Now making a suggestion, if you want to go for a walk like that, not so beautiful, it is not very unfortunate. Luo Bing excitedly agreed to always look at Luo Bing so happy to make Dong Li so angry that the two ends of the eyebrows were about to stick together in the heart of Dong Li, silently swearing. Lu Zhaoge seems to have noticed the discomfort of Dong Li, and asked the old man to see this kind of comfort, and he went between the two people who tried to suppress anger, and responded without any concern. Lu Zhaoge said nothing more silently, observing Luo Bing's interesting appearance. I thought this time, the qualities are not worse. Before viewing the information board about Luo Bing, there is an 8-pointed swordsmanship of the 7-6 piteous sister, with a certain probability of opening the hidden details. Lu Zhaoge read the information board, with her mouth smiling and rubbing her chin, saying that there is certain probability of opening a certain hidden episode. There will be only 1,000 taels of silver, but if it is necessary to clean the whole Mo Men, at home. Dong Li is riding on the back of Lu Zhaoge in an instant, using the fullness of Lu Zhaoge's cheeks to the fullest of Lu Zhaoge, not to the restlessness to the floor. Please do, Ludong. Li more frantically trying to pull more strong hands to say who craves your face. Suddenly a strange scent faintly flew to the small nose of Dong Li. Dong Li quickly sniffed. To see this abnormal Dong immediately forgot to go away from his. Anger panicked and shouted and rebelled with the map of the empty spirit, which was more and more clear already. At that time, at a mountain, the sky was far away from the sky, and fell into the whole river. In front of the river, there were also butterflies and dancing, to create a picture that was both painted and extremely gorgeous. From the door of the cave there is a lovely figure to step out, the slender fingers touching the stone to make a fulcrum. Long slender legs stepped on the grass and walked. The girl turned her eyes around the surrounding scene, and finally reached the scene. The petals glided lightly on the blushing cheeks of the young girl with little lips for a few months and had not met the sun. From a distance, there is a sound that is transmitted to the bamboo chamber of the duty to set a trip to the bamboo chamber of the duty of a trip to the bamboo chamber. That girl was Luo Bing, who heard the words and happily carrying skirt. Luo Bing kicked the flowers and fluttered towards the brightness of the morning as a flower blooming in the eyes of the prince's expectation. He is waiting for me only. Meanwhile, at the tea room, Lu Zhaoge and Dong Li are sitting opposite He Ting on the side serving the tea, pouring the stiff arms and folded with his arms, seems to be determined. Lu Zhaoge now feels extremely helpless to think for you a bit. As soon as she heard that Dong Li was already on the verge of exploding, thinking for your sake, 3 sects joining forces, and instead of taking me, you're thinking of bringing Luo Bing along. Lu Zhaoge asked again to be jealous. Dong Li tried to be like, nothing told anyone to be jealous. After that, no one said, but the whole cup of water took a cup of unexpected moves that made He Ting a bit startled. Dong Li pounded down the table, making He Ting's fragile heart trembling according to Dong Li. Asked you what you want to do in the end. The tough attitude of Dong Li, even Lu Zhaoge must be afraid to swallow saliva, as if seeing through the heart. After a while, thinking and arranging words to be careful, Lu Zhaoge, he spoke up with the 3 subjects to compete. But did he know its true meaning? Dong Li frowned slightly. Lu Dong Li heard it, but she was far from understanding. Still doubtful, she questioned back, treasure-seeking sect, Starfrost sect. What even are those? Right now, the door suddenly opened a cool breeze with countless flying petals. Luo Bing entered. According to the rules of the disciple Luo Bing by Keen Attorney General Master, Luo Bing breathed out a breath to wipe the sweat and could not even fall to the cheek. The soft gaze plus the pink cheeks looked tired, and combined with the breathing skills that Luo Bing learned in Tang Lao, is a master. Luo Bing now noticed in the room, and one more person was so faint that he could not exist. He Ting was busy serving the water for the other 2. So faint that it does not exist is that He Ting is busy serving the water for the 2 Kia Luo Bing to be confused hurriedly at the ceremony and the brother. Lu Zhaoge, though, not as frankly as it has been silently observing Luo Bing every time she saw her, not understanding why she always felt like she was looking at a selfie with real-life photos. Lu Zhaoge thinks of Luo Bing only wearing a thin skirt, combined with the expression of the other look that this temperament is indeed a perfect coordination. Luo Bing observed the attitude of Lu Zhaoge, thinking in the heart of the dude who was so highly respirated for the sound posture of everything he learned in Than Lao was used up, but the prince still did not react. Luo Bing is very determined to lead Lu Zhaoge and think if the master can avoid his face so he can stay with the prince for a while. Lu Zhaoge finally spoke. Luo Bing, I called me here to want me to go to the last 3 days, to go to the 3 subjects, to gather in my heart. I thought it would almost forget about my girlfriend in my previous life. There was a little bit more, it was a loophole already. Hearing about being able to follow Lu Zhaoge, we are outside. Luo Bing continued to be happy, but on the face she shyly lifted the bangs and said, obedient master. But in the eyes of Dong Li, Luo Bing is really a green tea. Hearted green tea just need to look at Luo Bing laughing and laughing at the sky, so angry with the teeth that is not self-control, and grinding this harsh thing. Why is this smile so much? Anger turned into actions to crush the cup of water in his hand. Two sons were present at the scene. Dong Li frustratedly stood up on his face and wrote the words that were furious and died in the world. Dong Li blends hard on the floor to go out in the indignation of Lu Zhaoge that it is difficult to understand where I guilty of the girl. Lu Zhaoge was not happy to glance at you smartly, but I dare to teach my master's life. Why did Hei Ting hear that? Then all the sweat hastily Thang Min. Hei Ting quickly earns an excuse to beat the master to let him pour tea for people. Hearing pouring tea, Luo Bing's eyes immediately flashed more brightly than the Stranjakar headlights, to jump to the Hei Ting to rob the trouble, to say that the brother was too much to add more tea for the teacher, instead of the brother. Hei Ting also did not prohibit the teapot. To Luo Bing took the opportunity to show off the skill of pouring tea, with both the body and the expression of the face of the tea pouring straight down the cup, sounds very smoothly. This is called the green tea industry. The fake ton of the fake ton, which accidentally looks charming while adding tea. Hei Ting, standing behind and read all of Luo Bing's face, is extremely confident with what he has just expressed, that he said that the sentence that leads to others is devoted to his hard work in Tan Lao, even though he is the Grand Master. But contrary to the delusion of Luo Bing Lu Zhaoge, it is very indifferent to her from the beginning to the end. It is not interesting even thinking about the other issue. Lu Zhaoge muttered, "Why did we feel that the first dentist is not angry with me, but is jealous?" Luo Bing silently sighed. So why was he eating butter again? Lu Zhaoge brought the cup of tea to her mouth, actually still secretly evaluating the actions of Luo Bing. Only regrettable, Luo Bing met them who experienced Lu Zhaoge here. Luo Bing's turmeric tea is also quite unfortunate that I am in my previous life. There is something that has never been experienced, but a bar is not familiar with me. Luo Bing widened his eyes and closed his eyes to look at the person in front of himself. Poise so unfortunate when he loved into nature, people will be attached to the love buff that looks at the one who is the best Luo Bing, and no exception. That's right. If the prince, because of a bit of his tricks and his mind, is still a dude, why is he still a deeply loving prince? Luo Bing regained the spirit of holding hands, determined to try to use your actions that made the prince really like you. Luo Bing, you need to make more efforts because of your head of love. Looking at Luo Bing, the atmosphere was bright as two electric balls that made Lu Zhaoge bewildered that this looks like this is determined to have to be able to give it to it. Why is it all over the previous life? The night was silent. Fireflies drifting high above the quiet mountains and forests, peaceful in every direction, except for one place. There were still 3 months left before the grand assembly of the three sects, and during this time, Luo Bing came up with all sorts of excuses to go in and out of Lu Zhaoge's room, leaving Hei Ting completely out of a job. Hei Ting was wiping the table when Luo Bing jumped in and robbed the brothers so that we would take care of. Then, Luo Bing both wiped and showed off her chest shape and bloomed the eyes of the heart of this is the green tea industry, wiping the table and accidentally seducing others. Lu Zhaoge go and seeing this scene just let go of a sentence without wiping and not wiping it anymore. It loses that table that makes Luo Bing feel in pain, but that does not discourage Luo Bing's will. When he saw Hei Ting, he was carrying the bathwater for Lu Zhaoge. She ran to take the pot of water for me. When carrying Luo Bing water pots, he deliberately fell on his body and pretended to be weak. Of course, the performance of Luo Bing tried to make a weak look, that the person who protected Luo Bing was so nervous to say who was wet, and this was a part of the green tea industry, so she was not careful to wet their clothes. Well, whoever hesitated Lu Zhaoge to bounce for Luo Bing, another cold water, pouring water, but also did not finish Hei Ting, chasing her out, making Luo Bing stand the picture always. Hei Ting quickly executed the order of Luo Bing to throw out, but the 2 rows of tears were so failed, but Luo Bing was still considered as no separation. Still hard with the ideal of beautiful living is charming. Lu Zhaoge this time, Hei Ting is cleaning the bed, Luo Bing happily running into the job of the brother to give me a job. Done, of course, must be seen by Luo Bing's fake performance, when she deliberately touched her knee on the edge of the bed. Relying on the Luo Bing ego and the whole person lying on the bed in a very indescribable posture is still part of the green tea industry. Luo Bing's performance seemed to be highly appreciated by the audience Lu Zhaoge and even seemed to hate Lu Zhaoge red eyes and said rolling around my bed so what Hei Ting instead of another bedsheet for us. Fleeting 3 months passed. Lu Zhaoge is still working hard to practice the indicators increasing continuously. Luo Bing stood observing the relentless exclamation that he was a prince, even if he was cultivating as well as a fairy. After the end of the cultivation of Lu Zhaoge let out a breath. Luo Bing must have just waited for this sentence immediately in response to the prince. Lu Zhaoge took out a treasure-shaped dish, like that treasure leaf enlarges into the air. Lu Zhaoge is filled with hope of the upcoming journey of the Tammon. In the early morning, Lu Zhaoge and Luo Bing sat on the boat, crossing the 9 clouds of high mountains, undulating white clouds. The eastern sunshine was shining with the rainbow. Lu Zhaoge, this dark face, this dollar, dared to be so angry that I did not see me and wait for me to come back to see how. It turned out that he was hidden with his disciple Luo Bing, following the very happy mind Hu Ya. This was the first time I and the prince went together. Luo Bing hugged her face and thought in her mind because she saw Lu Zhaoge's back in the back. The more she liked the man in front of her, Luo Bing, as well as many other girls, she also brought a dreamy soul and a boat with only her and the prince. She was acting in her head Luo Bing, who only thought of her. She also blushed with an extremely shameless ear, Luo Bing. Lu Zhaoge turned his head faintly. This made Luo Bing cover his mouth and could not get lost and embarrassed, and shyly if he became a lost word and was too stupid. She scolded herself. She was confused and did not know how to explain this. Lu Zhaoge is not very expression. He looked at her with confusing eyes. You just said? Luo Bing raised her head to stroke Mai's hair. Gentle gesture, her voice. Her voice said so excellent in the three subjects of a gathering would shock the four directions of the martial arts. Martial arts will definitely make those two sects terrified to try to go up. Suddenly Luo Bing turned to all praise, Lu Zhaoge Luo Bing to laugh over to solve this awkward story. She thought about the old days when she said, and at times like that, just praise the man who gave it to the story. But the best encouragement for them was that he was so great that I said such a crush. Luo Bing always thinks that he is doing so, just applying in theory that Luo Bing is still very confident with his speaking screen, until Lu Zhaoge waves his hand not heavy and not light to her, that it is enough to not flatter Luo Bing, as shocking to the brain to flatter the brain. The big question in her head said that Luo Bing's face was red, and her lips moved without speechlessness. In the mind, Luo Bing seemed to understand the other idea. Luo Bing shyly looked at the lower body of Lu Zhaoge. She was so bad that it was what she often said. Luo Bing's mind now was so happy, and so happy. So he kept fond of his lips if he was not sure that Luo Bing knew that this was an illusion for Lu Zhao. Luo Bing was stranga from just now until now. He turned his head to see what happened. Suddenly Luo Bing gripped his eyes close to him and his lips toward him. This atmosphere was so embarrassed. Fortunately, Lu Zhaoge is enough to wake up. He coldly emits a pure mindful of Luo Bing Aya for an hour because he is naturally pushed back. Luo Bing felt extremely hurt. She cried in the back. Lu Zhaoge passed through the last tribulation and breathed a sigh of relief. Hair. Not long after, Luo Bing gave Lu Zhaoge a glass of water. The son drank some of the water without Luo Bing behaved as if nothing had happened. Lu Zhaoge, the tone is not cold, but Luo Bing, you do not need to take care of the duty so much. Luo Bing has a little low self-esteem, but we are inherently a prince who bought it. Lu Zhaoge drank all the glasses of water and looked at Luo Bing, his eyes somewhat sympathetic because her previous fate was probably in her heart. She always considered herself lower than others. Lu Zhaoge thought to not betray the kindness of Luo Bing. Lu Zhaoge happily say more cups, yes. Prince Luo Bing replies the person holding the cup to pour water. Lu Zhaoge has a question he asked. Luo Bing, you like to call me with a son? Luo Bing was bewildered for some reason why Lu Zhaoge asked her like that. She naively answered that the prince did not like it. Luo Bing started to think about it, so the prince wanted us to call more intimate. Luo Bing was surprised and passionately looked at Lu Zhaoge, so I just laughed at Luo Bing, and laughed in a cunning way. She seemed to have thought a lot, did not say that Luo Bing beside him gently called Dad Lu Zhaoge, which was surprised by her to turn back to his mouth. Lu Zhaoge launched his mouth-locked Luo Bing to let her speak again. He tried to calmly tell me. Lu Zhaoge thought this stuff in her head was broken, and Lu Zhaoge coughed a few hours outside. He was a passing away, but inside he liked his mouth. He said that, but the man liked to be the father. The place where Lu Zhaoge and Luo Bing are trying to go to is Ting Wangdong, the venue for Tam Man, to gather here for surrounded by the majestic nature of the cloud covering the top of the mountain. And after a journey of laughing and crying, Lu Zhaoge and Luo Bing also arrived in Longdong Lu Zhaoge's communal house to say this is the place where the tranquility is to organize the 3-year-old subjects. Entering the main gate is not a shadow against the absence. Lu Zhaoge is satisfied and sad and angry that we have come close now, and then these guys are dreadful with me. Luo Bing looked far away. She pointed to her hands and said that there were people coming. 2 men and women also fought to escape them on their way here. Men are the remaining 9, tailed. Shen Qingqing. The closer they come, the more the face is clearly visible. Lu Zhaoge went forward to block in front of Luo Bing, saying, no need to take the exam with them, is just the one who was sent to deceive my disciple. Luo Bing standing behind Lu Zhaoge showed a sinister face in his heart to think of this person to do so, to be majestic with the prince. The current situation is Luo Bing standing behind Lu Zhaoge facing the 2 of them. Shen Qingqing and Zhang Chou. Luo Bing thinks, but at first I was about to give them a little bit of the main character. If it was like this, it was still flat. Zhang Chou smirked a very sinister face, thinking that the master told him to come here to threaten this name. A certain Fen must show well to see here. The 2 Shen Qingqing people solemnly rescued people together. Not yet waiting for the 2 of them to finish talking, Lu Zhaoge turned around and did not notice them, making Shen Qingqing and Zhang Chou bewildered. Lu Zhaoge looked up and sighed for an hour. Phone line. That has performed. Lu Zhaoge clasped his hands behind the strong wind blowing, causing yellow leaves to fall in the air to fall to the ground. Shen Qingqing and Zhang Chou with an O. Mouth-eye expression, don't look bewildered by the two of them, what the demon's face is distorted. My cheeks have not finished yet. After that, Zhang Chou came close to Shen Qingqing, whispering that he was showing off to us what to do now. Shen Qingqing nodded, and said that he turned his head to plan. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed, at the same time adopting the respectful posture of junior disciples, Zhang Chou and Shen Qingqing, pay respects to Sect Master Lu. They were deliberately using their status as juniors to arrive late, offering polite smiles and greetings, waiting for the other party to respond just so they could find fault afterward. Shen Qingqing and Zhang Chou looks respectful, but his face laughs extremely satisfied, because they think that the danger of this way is that the more polite people are, the more they cannot dig the story, that we can only be shut up, only. His only choice is as long as the ceremony. No matter how disgusted, can only say the ceremony. Hong Lu Zhaoge just stands still without speaking out the extremely quiet atmosphere. Zhang Chou started to whisper impatiently to Shen Qing, why haven't he said as long as the ceremony fake? Shi Qing responded to the shelf to get up and then count. The two of them were about to stand up upright, but suddenly their actions were stopped by the two of them in their hearts that were difficult to understand what this body suddenly did not move here, to be able to raise their heads to feel like something holding on to their bodies. Lu Zhaoge turned away from them, smirking disdainfully. Playing psychological games with us, forgetting that we can control the water. At this time, at the foot of Shen Qingqing and Zhang Chou is a puddle that makes the two of them unable to move, despite trying to struggle. Lu Zhaoge wavered his hand, causing the water to disappear enough. The two Shen Qingqing and Strong Save immediately fell to the ground, painfully shouting, "Hu ya!" Luo Bing stood on one side to look down on the two of them, huffed with the heavenly power of the prince to deal with the people not so light. The two of them stood up and kept angry, saying that they were just 3 trivial fake tricks. Zhang Chou stepped forward and clasped his hands, and then said the Grand Master of the subject. Seeing that Lu Zhaoge had no intention of returning to the story of Zhang Chou, he did not bother to reverence for his hands. He tilted his head to the side to say, the 100 miles around here was the Grand Master of our Grand Master and the Grand Master of Tui. Shen Qingqing stood on one side to see Lu Zhaoge's disdainful attitude, thinking that this low name seemed to be the same in the low rumors of the religious rumor that did not make any empty game I will go up. The name Zhang Chou continued at the back of his back and was prepared. And then Mo Men Mi just did not wait for Zhang Chou to say. Lu Zhaoge immediately raised his hand. Lu Zhaoge swung his hand and pointed to Zhang Chou. One side of Zhang Chou immediately swelled up. Suddenly a part of Zhang Chou's leg was exploded with Zhang Chou lying on the painful ground, hugging his leg and shouting on Shi Qing nearby, and was hit by blood and feared by the eyes and eyes. Shen Qingqing immediately trembled and fitted 3 corn and said something like this he just pointed out. Lu Zhaoge swung his hand to create a noisy mouth. Zhang Chou was immediately shouting by the water to make his mouth shut, only the sounds. Luo Bing looks at Lu Zhaoge's back shadow in his admiration as if the prince only can use this heavenly force like this. The prince is so hegemony. Zhang Chou and his hand towards Shen Qingqing for help, but can only make a sound without a word. Shen Qingqing at this time was afraid of death and blushing, seeing Luo Bing and Lu Zhaoge together entered. Shen Qingqing to dare to move back to Zhang Chou. Shen Qingqing both sweats and soup with Luo Bing and Lu Zhaoge, just thought that he could stop him with the bleeding, that he did not remember the name pointing to his brain. Lu Zhaoge sat down on the chair to say tea enjoyment. Shen Qingqing bewildered at him. This is implicitly agreeing. Shen Qingqing tried the acupuncture point for Zhang Chou to see the reaction of Lu Zhaoge. Zhang Chou to be the acupuncture points in pain and scream. After all, tired Zhang Chou fainted, and Shen Qingqing took a sigh of, but suddenly, thinking about what makes Shen Qingqing's face amazed. This is the Grand Master in rumors, why there is a type of gas that makes others terrified like this. Lu Zhaoge still calmly sitting and enjoying the tea and seeing them still. There was no intention to leave. Lu Zhaoge asked why he was thirsty. Shen Qingqing shocked his blue face without blood, but Shen Qingqing reflexively immediately carrying Zhang Chou ran away. As if he stayed for another second, they would not be able to return to the pants he asked me to be thirsty. Or did. Luo Bing just poured tea for Lu. Zhaoge just smiled as if she also understood the idea of the prince, and Lu Zhaoge did not show any emotions in response. We only lacked the way to write the sentence, but we did not go on the face of the dog. Luo Bing reached out and lifted one side to giggle his hair. He said he had to say it. Lu Zhaoge still has a cold face to turn to. Luo Bing to sit here and there are no outsiders, but the scenery is very beautiful after a while. The Kangjin men. The they comes there. Luo Bing replied, and then sat down on the chair. Luo Bing put his hand on his chin to look at Lu Zhaoge, saying that the prince was just now of a very dangerous flattering dafa. Flattering forever. The light of the page shining on the Lu Zhaoge people exude his handsome beauty. Luo Bing sat next to himself, unable to control himself, but peeked a few times in his heart to think that a dude watched Lu Zhaoge drink tea in his heart. Luo Bing constantly today, he was so beautiful that he was so beautiful. Seeing Luo Bing Lu Zhaoge's attentive looks, this map is really possible, everywhere. You can generate the feeling of this drama. I don't know what there is anymore in her head. Young woman dreaming of Hoke Xuan maybe later when she recalled. The secret thoughts, even if not suitable for the situation, will automatically turn into peach blossoms blooming around the communal house. At this time in another place, Shen Qingqing is still carrying Zhang Chou, running all the speed in his heart and scolding his mother. His father is definitely a monster. Perhaps running for a long section, Shen Qingqing lost a lot of strength on her face, sweating, but still gritting the teeth. Running all the speed of Zhang Chou on the back of Shen Qingqing is not quite much throughout Zhang Chou's surface section, constantly being hit by low branches and trees that just shouted in pain, "Ai pain." Shen Qingqing tried to run in the heart of the heart. Zhang Chou on the back of Shen Qingqing was hit continuously with a swollen face like a pig's head could not bear the match further. Zhang Chou just crying and say, Shen Qingqing was startled. Shen Qingqing shouted, "Don't talk to me!" Then the two of them went back. A while later at Kongjinmen, Shen Qingqing finally brought Zhang Chou to the two fellow subjects who just saw their appearance, was extremely surprised, and immediately asked the second brother. The subject saw countless scratches on Zhang Chou's face and was still frustrated and scratched by Hugh. Inside the Kangjin men, Lin Long, the confident face said, "Hundreds of miles around here will belong to us." Sha Tu heard and laughed happily, haha. Suddenly the Shen Qingqing people pushed the door and rushed into the Mong carrying Zhang Chou, who saw Sha Tu and Lin Long, called out loudly, an extremely urgent tone of his master, Lu Zhaoge, assaulted other people's face. Hearing the disciple said, Sha Tu was angry on the forehead. All the blue veins gripped his hand and shouted loudly, "Lu Zhaoge, you very well." Then Lin Long stood beside him silently and glanced at Sha Tu, thinking that he was so excited. Sha Tu threw a pill into Zhang Chou's mouth and then loudly swallowed. Zhang Chou's face was scratched quite a lot because of the pain that his face became twisted after trying to swallow the pills down his face. Sha Tu's face grew at Zhang Chou was very impatient to say what happened. Zhang Chou immediately struggled Mao, saying that, "I was so hurt. Don't make you read the above chapters." But the other subject tried to keep Zhang Chou sit quietly. Sha Tu frowned and bit his teeth and said that he pointed out his left hand. At this time Zhang Chou just continued to talk, and the disciple felt something else on Lu Zhaoge had a heavenly force. Two people, Lin Long and Sha Tu, were shocked at the same time, saying what a preliminary waste guy could. Shen Qingqing stood beside an anxious face to tell Lam El, who had a problem that he did not know, if he did not know that Lin Long turned to look at Shen Qingqing. His face was a bit frowned and said that he would hide anything else, quickly say it. Shen Qingqing immediately reported what she knew a few days ago in our area. There was a genius of the world when Koi Lin had 9 heavenly religions that everyone could hear. Lin Long and Sha Tu finished listening. They were shocked to widen their eyes. Sha Tu thinks of that terrible power. 9 heavenly religions indicate that people are so horrible, people who seem to turn this whole place into a basin. Sha Tu recalled the old year when Mr. Fai Kiev went there to determine that power ended up, who had the heavenly order instruction if he was a person of anonymous sect. At that time, Sha Tu was in the air and was immediately emitted by a stream of power that covered Sha Tu, causes Sha Tu to be threatened with a fen. Sha Tu immediately drove the sword flying in the opposite direction. Sha Tu had just left there, just glancing behind the hand to control the flying sword, also trembling constantly. The great practice was running quickly by the pressure of a great practitioner that we could not come to see the place. Returning to the reality of Sha Tu black, his face frowned in his heart. He made a speculation now. Sha Tu immediately patted his head on his head. Finally, Sha Tu sat and trembled in the silent chair, thinking that he dared to see him. He did not blame him to dare to throw his feet and then go to this country. Zhang Chou and the other disciples who saw Sha Tu kept sweating continuously, like bathing in their hearts, or masters so much too much water to drink water. At this time, Lin Long's expression is also extremely worried about the 9 heavenly religions. Unexpectedly, in Lin Long's heart, I admire Lu Zhaoge. How can I be able to match the sandals for Mo Men? Lin Long turned to look at Sha Tu trembling on the chair, and thought only at this ugly father. Lin Long again raised his shirt to smile and laughed on the beauty, and his heart just need to be able to join Lu Zhaoge. Sha Tu sat trembling in a chair that was difficult to speak out, where the entire elderly elder was negotiated, so how many pleasures for Mo Men. Zhang Chou and the other disciple heard he suddenly spoke out to advise Ya Tu attorney, but he was not mistaken, but yielded to Mo Men. How much should he negotiate? Sha Tu stood up and shouted at his mouth and shouted for us. Whatever he did, he did. He could see Sha Tu furious, and the other disciple only had to listen to obedience. Lin Long glanced to look at Sha Tu, who was patting himself on his head. In contrast to other places, the system bell rang. Hearing the bell, Lu Zhaoge wondered the warning system. Lu Zhaoge still sitting on that chair, and the cup of tea still in front of him just now. He did not drink anymore, but focused on thinking about something, and Luo Bing was just sitting next to admire the beauty of Lu Zhaoge in her heart, constantly excluding the death of the world. Moment's announcement of attempts is 501. Lu Zhaoge put his hand on his chin to touch the face of a lot of thought, exceeded 500 points, and not badly seemed to see Kang Jin Men and the Daemon both understand his implications already. The system of announcement of attendance is 502. Lu Zhaoge again stroked his chin. Unfortunately, the small sect of fame and fame will not be much forever. Must think of a way to find a better thing. After making a decision to Lu Zhaoge, he returned to a normal state to hold a cup of tea and drink. Luobing beside him is still passionate about watching Lu Zhaoge forever. He finally noticed Luobing's naked eyes. For Lu Zhaoge, a little surprised, Lu Zhaoge to put the cup of tea down and continue to look at Luobing, saying, "Why on the face of the face with star flowers?" Luobing fell in love with the lake and then nodded continuously. Lu Zhaoge saw Luobing. Luobing was startled at the beginning. Lu Zhaoge gave up, not knowing what to say in the beginning, asking some more questions in this baby. We just need to be stressed, so do not make a frank person a little bit more and more unhappy than stars. People like Lu Zhaoge cannot understand that the person who thinks himself is inferior when love can be reserved as much as he cannot understand. For some people who say love far away, at moment dish dan tan, Lu Dongli boring to sit on his chin on the table, bewildered that now he is playing with that map. To do what is behind him is a small Chu Dong sitting on his own. Imagine the scene of Luobing and Lu Zhaoge had sex causing Lu Dong to die. They dared to do something nonsense, then know his hand. Lu Dong pondered, and then went to discuss the division of Tu Nguyen Tam Mon. But the body was the elder Mo Men, so he was more concerned about this issue. Having been up to the blue sky, I muttered alone. I did not know what the three subjects were. Seemingly remembering Luobing, Lu Dongli thought of himself his sister-in-law's sister-in-law from the past until now. The lovely Chu sat obediently and asked the mastery to see the switch right. Lu Dongli waved his hand to say that the gas was urinating Chu, to listen to his master's words. The kid rubbing his hand and thinking in his stomo men tired of death, he would flatter the master. Please forgive the master, so he is definitely not wrong. Or is it possible? Lu Dongli approached the cup to the baby's forehead that made him cry out, she reminded me. The little girl Chu pouted, and did not dare to go against words, only dared to refute in the stomo men clearly, because the master did not pay attention to why the person who was hit by him was always me. Only a while the Chu was good at the body of her body, covered by a bright yellow light of the metallic metal, standing and observing. It was also fun as the disciple of her disciples who had been known for a few days. After finishing, this small body was tired of Chu breathing out. Lu Dongli stands and does not stingy applaud that the kid is not bad children, easy to teach. Xiaoqiu is really a clever child. When he was praised by the master, he hugged his face and appeared to be lovely. Please see the teacher who tried to see if he could go down the mountain as the second master and the master. The words of the little Chu made Lu Dongli a little hurting. Why did everyone want to follow the masters? So the little Chu observed the face of the master's face and saw that she was shifted and panicked. But Lu Dongli suddenly remembered the image of me and Lu Zhaoge in the past. And when I was young, I was also the tail, specializing in grabbing the singer, and I could not blame them. The Dong still could not agree with the little girl, Chu Xiaoqiu, in front of her eyes. I can't go down the mountain. Xiaoqiu wondered why. Lu Donglai explained that he was a disciple of the monk. Xiaoqiu still does not understand the master, why the disciples' officials can't go down the mountain. Lu Dongli sa Tri deliberately answered this child to play this child because there is no door. Xiaoqiu still did not understand that the teacher said that the real girl crouched herself in an autistic corner. The disciples of the disciples mean without the door. The disciples of the disciple had no door to stand there, and did not have the consciousness to soothe the child at all. Anyone told the good children, they did not learn badly if they did not do it. If it was no more than me, do not go down. Lu Dongli sighed a little, thought that she was so small, so I was a bit too much to comfort her a bit ago. Suddenly Xiaoqiu stood up. The little girl Chu smiled and turned around and told the master, I understood that this was the hidden place that the Grand Master said. Lu Dongli did not understand what she said. She was bewildered and asked the little girl, Chu, what did the child say to her? In front of the Lu Donglili, little Chu proudly patted her chest to say the teaching of the hidden man. But later, he had to let the people imbued with a moral morality that was not good to ask any morality. Little Q, who carries the Attorney General? The teacher answered outside. Hello Kitty inside is a tiger. The new little Chu was Lu Zhaoge for enlightenment of many truths to hold hands, like adults looking at the sky. A large shadow standing towards the sub, Q. Xiaoqiu feared to turn his head. Little Chu thought that master wanted to beat him with fear of his hand and hugged his head and shouted. Lu Donglai embraced the child, sobbing he was the best, so he was with the master on the mountain to grow old. A little light in the sky attracts the attention of the Lu Dong Ca. In the sky, a male and white man wearing a white price on the sword. Lu Dong is surprised is the person of Kiev Tong. The idea on the face is the super sect that makes a sense of dance. Super subjects, of course. Indispensable classes in the disciple class are divided into foreign disciples. With a disciple of the leg, it is just why there is a meeting to make money. But the name suddenly appeared in the sky is the disciple of the legs that speak. In another way is the disciple who is personally the elder of the sword. Tong, or Tongchu, teaches the noble status. Lu Dongli looked at the person who suddenly appeared in silently judging this name that seemed to be a great fullness of the second Kai. Trunk Lu Dongli observed that it was Tam Kai Trung Gigi, so I can still deal with real strength a bit. I will hide the monk to the middle of the second stage to see how he said. The person who came to the sword was still standing high and did not move. Lu Dongli feels strango why that guy doesn't come here. Suddenly, the person standing in the sword and crying out. This broadcast radiates the horrible power echoing throughout the mountain. This hour helped Lu Dongli understood this guy, who wanted to use a sword, to inform that the foot of the sword disciple had come yet. This has made Lu Dongli remember the Sinjur of his house, and frustrated the name of the foot of this sword. Why is it like the song? But it is just the same thing. Just showing off the Sinjur only makes others feel that the Sinjur is showing off this name. But I want to skewer him too. Little Chu also feels discontented by the teacher who catches the attorney master. It is true that teachers and students think that they are very similar to laughing and rubbing the head of the little Chu haha, very similar to that master. Then, Lu Dongli blurted out and smiled wickedly. Haha, how could he be disrespectful to the guest from Kiev Tong like that? But let's say hello to him. After saying that the pages were tied to the side of the side tightly, suddenly Lu Dongli looked out something seemed to not need to take action. Standing on the other is the disciple of the foot of the sword, and the sword waiting for the two teachers and students to have any movements. What are the movements? Chen Xiao gradually lost patience and anger. We are the legendary disciples of the sword. Ton Kiev. Tong that competitor fans with Yu Yue Chen Xiao. These guys dare to wait for us to wait for stars. Chen Xiao turned away, seemed to not want to stay, so do not attempt to receive their practice resources anymore. Inherently, we are just a way to Mo. Men, if we are so rude, do not blame us. At the other side, there are two silhouettes also go towards Mo men. A beautiful lady appears. Luo Bing's eyes are Luo Bing's beautiful appearance, which seems to have touched the right G point of Chen Xiao, making him blush. Chen Xiao was surprised to think in the Stomo men in this world, there was a royal lady of the pearl like that. Then he also discovered that the person standing next to the beautiful lady looked like the attorney Mo Men. Chen Xiao arrogantly smirked this trip without waste. Lu Zhaoge signed in a breath. Standing to block the sun, a handsome black body, handsome hands clasped on his back, pretending to be mature martial. Looking at the appearance of Lu Zhaoge like that, Chen Xiao also bewildered. How could that person be so immersive? Chen Xiao grabbed into punching and punching the other hand that seemed to be able to enlighten anything, so I understood and then I had to do so and learned it next time. Suddenly discovered that the beautiful girl like the other was looking at her, twisted and shocked, she was looking at her. Chen Xiao shyly thought to greet first to tell her that this was the legendary disciple of the sword Tong. So Chen Xiao came to block the lotus leaves of the two Lu Zhaoge and Luo Bing under their marks. Chen Xiao introduced ourselves as the legendary disciple of the second apostle of the elderly. Chen Xiao happily laughed in her heart and thought that so many titles she would admire me very much. The male disciples of Mo Men did not have the door with me. Lu Zhaoge basically did not care about him just coldly, while Luo Bing was next to his sparkling gaze, looking at him as if he had touched and passionate about love. Both then a fly away to squeeze Xiao to stay in the eyes and not understand what happened to him being him. Butter Star Xiao as petrified. Turning around behind, looking at Lu Zhaoge, he just flew away and could not directly kill people right now. This spirit told me to hold back but just thought of Chen Xiao's hand and tightened. Chen Xiao did not say much quickly to chase after both of them, so they flew to the front to stop the person who was in the face. Lu Zhaoge waved his hand. To raise the carpet of yourself higher than Chen Xiao was threatened with both bewildered people thinking about what. Look at the direction of Lu Zhaoge Chen Xiao, which is blinded by sunlight to cover up his hand. Lu Zhaoge from above, looking down to talk to Chen Xiao. I am the Grand Magnetic Moment, Lu Zhaoge high in the upper.